Welcome everyone to another stream. We apologize that we're starting late. We just kind of got started late, and then we also kind of just hanging out before the stream a little bit, getting ready. This is a stream. It's a charity stream, as it's labeled, for a Lutheran family that is pretty much got hit on hard times by a kind of getting scammed by a group that was supposed to help on their house. They had house repairs, got insurance claims, and it went wrong. The people didn't show up to do the proper work. So there's a link. I think the link in the comment or in this comments I just put actually didn't work. So let me send a new one. There's a link in the description or a link here in chat that I just sent to donate to them directly if you want to donate to them directly on if you find that easier. And then all proceeds from the stream we'll just put into the GoFundMe. So they are a Lutheran family. They're a friend of a friend, to me at least. One of my friends knows them. And so, yeah, I apologize if that name was not correct, Weiss. But it's what it looks like to me, I suppose. And I don't know. I think it looks German maybe, and I don't speak German at all. But what we're going to be doing for the stream is a denominations tier list. And if you have any questions or anything in chat, you can throw them in chat and maybe we'll answer them as we go. We usually interact with chat quite a bit. If you throw a donation in chat, then we will, assuming your comment is not obscene, we will read it off and answer your questions within reason. All right. I suppose we can begin. So we have I think 29 denominations here or traditions that we identified. Some of it's a little hazy sometimes on trying to figure out exactly what is and isn't a tradition. But these are listed alphabetically, and we already have Lutheran in S tier, of course. And all the others we will debate because we actually talked about this in our group chat before, and none of us really agreed. So there was some general trends, but nobody thinks that Quakers are better than I think Anglicans or something. But
no.
But in general, we didn't seem to agree on what the list was. So hopefully there will be some good banter. Thank you.
I'm ready to go.
Whole squad for $10.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
There we go.
Hey,
Very
it's
good.
a fellow Noah. We love to see other Noahs in this stream.
All right. So, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Oh.
I'm just looking at the tier. We've got A, B, C, D, E, which is a grade I never give to anyone. So it's a special E tier and then F. Plenty of room. Are we going to organize them left to right as well as top to bottom, or is it just for?
That was my thought. I think left to right. If you want to organize them top to bottom and then rearrange left to right after, we could.
That's fine. It's that's too fine grained for me, but we can do it if you guys want.
Sure. Yeah, let's do left to right. We'll go fine grained. Why not? That way we have more squabbles.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Is anyone opposing Lutheran in S tier?
Ideally.
Ideally. Oh yeah, I guess we should clarify. Do we think these are we going by the practical on the ground situation, or their official confession, or what they historically meant?
Vibes of all three put together.
Three put together. Okay.
I think the practical on the ground is going to be relevant for left to right, but maybe for up to downs, focus on theology just to make it easier. I don't know.
Sure, we can go based on that. Let's do that. We'll do up and down as based on theology, and then within each category, we'll kind of do the on the ground situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's inherent in the symbolism, right? Because it's Luther's seal. It's not the blue LCMS wavy cross.
Yeah.
If that were the case, we might have to go B tier.
Yeah. I mean, I had to use symbols. Yeah. we're down here.
No, that makes me sad. Let's keep it at S.
Yeah, I tried to pick symbols that were somewhat universal, but it's hard because a lot of these traditions don't have a true universal symbol that makes them up. So I just picked something that was relatively representative of a tradition. All right, I guess we can start though. These are alphabetical. So A is first one, Adventists. So we have usually most of them celebrate Seventh Day. So of the Adventists, there's 22 million. Last time I checked Wikipedia. which probably is a little outdated, but like 22 million of them worldwide, and 21 million of those are Seventh-day Adventists. So that's pretty much they're all Seventh-day Adventists. So we have believers baptism, as they'd say, credo baptism, kind of a weird Ellen White prophecy thing going on. They thought the world was going to end, but then they were wrong. Some weird food restriction rules about like what you can and can't eat and stuff. I don't know how much of that's binding anymore, but some of them still practice it.
I'm just gonna say, if your religion started with a false prophet, you don't have a great claim to be like super high.
Yeah.
No.
And they make you go to church on Saturdays too. Like, who the heck?
Yeah, it has to be Saturdays. It has to be a Saturday. Yeah. They might be. I forget if they're Sabbatarians too. I won't make any claims about that. They are? Okay.
100%. Yeah. I had a guy who was a Seventh-day Adventist come to my house and give me a book and everything. It was interesting.
Yeah, they have like 28 fundamental beliefs, I think, is their confession. And that was like, I think the latest edition was 2005 or maybe 2010, something like that. It was fairly recent.
Yeah.
We're putting these guys.
The question is like if Lutheranism is the bar, for S, like what's the bar for F? Like do we know automatically who's going to be the F?
I feel like, Quakers and Adventists have got to be down there, because Adventists are also legalists, and they're just, who knows what the heck
they are.
They're all over the place.
I think we can always move them back up.
F. What did you say?
We can always move them back up.
Yeah, that's true. We can always move them up. We can start an F.
Yeah.
Hell, Oilers people. Oilers people's always in the chat. Dedicated follower.
Yeah.
All right.
Did Noah ask a question with his donation, or was he just being that generous?
Just being that generous. He said, "Charity stream, love to see it."
Ah, lovely.
And then he suggested E tier for Adventists.
We can respect that.
I guess we'll put it there for now. We'll put it there for now.
All right, Anabaptists. They have the famous Anabaptist painting. I tried to find like an Anabaptist logo, and there's like nothing that unites them really as a logo. Hello, Azine Doris.
That's unsurprising.
So we have Anabaptists, obviously Credo Baptists. Hubmeier's their main theologian. He's a Reformation era theologian that pretty much believes in like what became Protestant Molinism as far as predestination views go. In general, they're pretty wacky in theology. They're not just like your typical Baptists. A lot of them were like apocalyptic. They're very anti-structural. They don't believe you can serve in governments. Some of them are like anarchists or like communitarians. Today, this is specifically non-primitive Baptists, by the way, because I have Amish later for primitive Baptists.
Some people would say they're Anabaptists, but
yeah, they are Anabaptists. But I figured we should count like non-primitivists as different from the primitivists, since they're very like, they're pretty different groups.
It's the anarcho-primitivism of religion.
It kind of is. So like the biggest group today would be like Kari's Fellowship. They kind of just look like Baptists, but then they have their weird Anabaptist distinctives where they'll have like some oddities about their theology and stuff. And some of them still have like some squabbles with technology stuff.
Okay. But no false prophets that we know of.
Not anymore so much, but historically they did have some weird prophets. Like the Zwickau prophets, right? Weren't they Anabaptist?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
I know Luther writes against some of them.
Yeah. Usually when he's talking about the enthusiasts, he's talking about the Anabaptists.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to say that they get to be like D-ish, and then like, I don't know.
Are they really worse than the Adventists, though? I mean, at least as an Adventist, you can be in government,
Yeah, I don't know. In some ways, I feel like they're better than Adventists, and they're always worse. Like, they don't like base themselves on a false prophet, or in the case of Seventh-day Adventists, two false prophets, like back to back.
It's not that big of a deal to not participate in government. Most of us don't do it anyway.
It's true. I mean, I don't know if they believe in voting either. I mean, like, I don't believe in voting, but like, I do go to vote though.
Wait, what?
I don't believe in voting, but I vote. Like, I don't believe we should have voting, but I vote nonetheless.
I see. Yeah.
I'm not much of a supporter of the the democracy system, but I vote nonetheless out of principle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at local level, it's not a bad idea, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess we'll keep it in D tier for now. I guess they have a little bit more flexibility. This is a pro and a con, but you have some more flexibility, so they have more of a chance to be right than Adventists do.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, because
we just rank these by percentage of members who will be in heaven. That would be a perfect. Who's next?
So this is Ancient Church of the East. So this is so we have two of these groups. There's Ancient Church of the East, and then the next one is over here is the Assyrian Church of the East. These are both churches that are Nestorians, and they have been out of communion with the other churches since the Council of Ephesus.
So they're not just Miaphysites; they're actually Nestorians.
They're Nestorians, yeah, the other direction. Okay. So they broke off earlier, and they're from the land of Assyria, obviously. So that's where they come from. The Ancient Church of the East specifically, so there's a small distinction between the two. The Ancient Church of the East, which we're doing first, they're on the Julian calendar, and the Assyrian Church of the East is on the Gregorian calendar, and that's their difference. So the Ancient Church of the East are the old calendarists of the Nestorian world. Like on the one hand, they're ancient and like liturgical. They're a sacramental body. Like they have like these things going for them, like that they clearly have like ancient historic roots. On the other hand, they're literally Nestorians. They've been Nestorious.
Yeah, but on the third hand, they're like in the middle of Iraq, like fighting, resisting Islam.
That's true. They are. Yeah. They do live under persecution. Does that add to their orthodoxy?
A little bit, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think if we're doing the chance in heaven tier list, they got a decent shot,
Except for that, they're literally Nestorians.
That's true.
They venerate Nestorius.
I say D tier, I don't know.
We might need more. We might need A through C to be freed up, but yeah, Nestorianism is not good. It's not good to believe heresy.
Well, so they're old calendarists too, which means they believe in splitting a church over a calendar. So that's also pretty cringe.
Yeah, and a pretty minor calendar change too. I mean, like Gregorian versus Julian calendars, it's not actually that huge of a difference either.
Maybe we should put them down with the Adventists then, honestly. I mean,
that's so mean. Like, I don't know. They're fighting Islam, guys. Like they're preserving. Okay, but if we're gonna do this, then we're gonna have. Are we gonna have issues with?
Imagine someone saying you're anathema for a calendar change, Noah. Just imagine that.
Yeah, that's true.
These are the guys that well, like these guys kept doing what they've always been doing, but these guys they were like, okay, literally the whole world's on the Gregorian calendar, and having our church out of sync is really whack. And so they were like, we should be practical and modernize it. And these guys were like, no, we can't be 2 days off. and so they literally left. They left because they didn't want to be 2 days off.
Okay, we can go with the Adventists then, if that's fine.
Put them down with the Adventists.
Which one was it now? These guys are the
old calendar guys down there.
And these guys up here,
Wazim makes
just because they're schismatics.
Wazim makes a good point that you've got to look at the history of helping against the Mongols, helping against the Muslims as well. But
Noah says they aren't defending Christianity because they are literally Nestorians.
True. Okay. You know what? Yeah. It's hard to argue with that.
All right. Well, I guess we can leave them like this for now. These guys are lower because they're schismatics. And because we're Gregorian calendar supporters here, so
Yes.
Anglicans. This is obviously not specifically the Church of England. This is just Anglicanism. Hence why I didn't use the Church of England logo. A tier?
Yeah. If we're talking Anglicanism at its best, then probably A tier. If it's Anglicanism at its worst, probably like C tier.
The thing is, though,
Oh
like,
man, C
is,
really? For at its worst?
Lutheranism but Lutheranism isn't like the ELCA, right? Because they're not actually Lutherans. The question
Yeah,
is, are
Sure.
your C tier Anglicans actual Anglicans?
Yeah, I think we're talking.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, that's part of it too, right? We said that's like, well, that's part of that's part of within a tier that we decided. So this is for like their theological tradition historically. Like, what's the
Okay.
So like the Book of Common Prayer, the general history of their theologians, things like that.
39 articles, vague though they may be. No, like
I think they're A tier in that
tier.
respect.
I think they're
like, who else is going to go in A tier? I guess is the question.
And
Yeah.
Unless we're going to leave it empty.
If we're going to talk about like the pragmatics of things, like okay, Assyrian Church of the East and so on, resisting Islam and or the Mongols, like look at what the Church of England has done. Not to get too spicy politically here, but a lot of evangelism of various stripes. Anyways, I'm comfortable with that.
I think A is good.
I
They
think
still
that's
believe in the
fine.
divine right of
The
kings.
liturgical. All right, Congregationalists. This is the UCC logo because most Congregationalists are part of the United Church of Christ today. But this is not specifically them necessarily. Like that affects obviously within a tier, but this is just Congregationalists. This would include the Puritans, the Separatists, the Nonconformists. At least a lot of them would be Congregationalists. This would also include people who were actually like under the label Congregationalists, like First Congregational Church. This is like Saybrook platform type people. They're pretty much Reformed. Their confession is based on the Westminster, except for the fact that they're Congregationalist. So they took the Westminster and then just made it Congregationalist instead of Presbyterian in polity. Other than that, it's like pretty much the same. So they're kind of like particular Baptists, except for they baptize babies. But other than that, they're kind of like the middle ground between those two, between Presbyterians and particular Baptists.
Are they C tier then?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, I'm good with C tier for now.
And are these the Church of Christ who don't have music in church?
Yeah, those are the guys. I think they don't have instruments or something still.
Well,
but that's because of their Reformed heritage.
Okay.
Because remember, Reformed historically didn't use instruments either.
That's
So,
right.
like-
It's just instruments because they can sing psalms vocally. They just can't use.
Yeah.
external.
I think today though, like there's like a split over that and like it's divided. And some churches don't use instruments, but they'll sing whatever songs. Like they'll sing hymns, but it has to be a cappella.
Okay.
Notice we're based because we put the Nestorians over the Anunnaki. All right, C tier for now. We can always move them. All right, this is the Dutch Reformed logo. I couldn't find a better logo for the Dutch. I almost put like the Dutch seal, like the seal of the Netherlands, but like there was no great logo. I thought of using the CRC logo, but the CRC isn't even like fully confessional anymore. So I didn't know what to do, and no one knows what the URC is, so I didn't want to use theirs. So this is a Dutch Reformed. They're just like Presbyterians, except for they're Dutch instead of Scottish. And they're I actually have a blog post on the Dutch versus Scottish Reformed, and their differences are pretty small. The Dutch have a lot less to confess, like a lot less to bind to them, because their confession is like a quarter of the length or something of the Presbyterians. So it's a lot shorter, and it's a lot more focused on like practical pastoral things, and honestly, from a Lutheran perspective, much more gospel oriented. Whereas the Presbyterian confession is like, I think the like smaller catechism is like 40% law, and then 60% other things, which are largely also law. And then the Heidelberg which is for the Dutch, is much more like balanced.
Oh yeah,
Other than that, they're virtually identical.
the Heidelberg is like actually pretty darn close to the Augsburg Confession in many ways.
Yeah.
I mean,
then they have the Synod of
temp-
Dort.
Well, yeah, if they were at the
Yeah.
Synod of Dort, that's bad.
They lead the Synod of Dort.
Uh,
Which is like, it's not all bad though. Like a lot of the Synod of Dort are things we would agree with condemning, because like
sure.
the remonstrants, which we'll get to later, they're down here. The remonstrants are like pretty wacky. They're not just like
Yeah.
reformed with like a different view of predestination. They're like trying to reject natural theology, and they're pretty much trying to be biblicists.
F
So
tier.
like
Natural theology is we need it.
we'll get to them when we get to them, because this is also like you have to consider the modern instantiation of the remonstrants, because they're not quite the same as what they used to be. I think they belong in B.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
C.
that's
I think
fair.
they're above. I think they're better than Presbyterians, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking though. Like, should we move everything down that's below A, because we need this B tier. We need this B tier for like papists and Orthodox and stuff. Although maybe we can negotiate that.
Yeah, we can negotiate that. I think we can leave it in B for now. We can move everything down if we want.
Yeah, I think
All right.
B's good. Yeah.
We got Eastern Orthodox. This is the Greek Orthodox logo.
Nice.
I think B tier. Do we need to explain Eastern Orthodoxy? They're the biggest Eastern Church. There you go. Greeks, Russians, they hate each other right now. They're not even in communion, but they're all part of this umbrella.
Old world cultures have a church, and it's called this one.
Yep.
Church of the Mediterranean and Russia.
Except for Italy.
Yeah.
And Spain and France, which are also on the Mediterranean.
Okay, fine. That area plus Russia.
I think B. I don't know whether I want to put them. On the one hand, the Reformed theology is so much closer to Lutheran theology. Like, if you read Turretin, tons of it sounds Lutheran and is like totally in line with what we say. On the other hand, the Eastern Orthodox are sacramental and liturgical, and they follow a church year. So like outwardly, they look close to us, but their theology is like really different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem.
Yeah.
That's why maybe like that's what the B tier is for. It's like super, super awesome on this, and then like kind of wacky in this other way. But
yeah,
that is a hard
that
problem.
may be fair. There's also our Christology is really similar too. They're probably the closest. Well, I don't know that much about Catholic Christology, but like Eastern Orthodox Christology is very close to ours because we're so reliant on Eastern Fathers.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, the rest of their system is very different from ours.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm good with B tier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the World Evangelical Alliance logo, which is the largest international evangelical body, which includes tons of evangelical bodies around the world, like almost all the big evangelical churches around the world that are not like part of a particular historical tradition. They're all part of this thing, the World Evangelical Alliance. So this is just like, think of like your staple evangelical church, probably like your Bible church down the road, probably your non-denom church down the road, a lot of small Baptist churches, a lot of like kind of Reformed-ish churches that aren't like confessional Reformed. They're all part of this category. This is a big umbrella evangelical Christianity.
Is there anything good about it now that you said all that?
they most of them aren't super like Pentecostal. They don't have, to my knowledge, like most of the big players, like, they're not having like weird prophets and stuff. A lot of them are just like your, standard Baptist church down the road, pretty much.
Okay.
So
they could be a C tier.
Yeah, I think they could be up there. Like, I'm fine with C, maybe, or D. On the other hand, though, some of them are a little charismatic. Like, like you might go to a non-denom church down the road, and they're not like full-blown charismatics really, but they might be, leaning in that direction. Kind of mystical.
And this is again the whole doctrine versus practice thing, because you've got Nestorians, but it's like you might worship with them, and they're not going to be like two planks of wood in their chant.
Right.
So we could do D as well. I don't like that logo. It looks gross. Put it lower.
That's their logo. I was trying to find something like that looked a little cleaner, but yeah, this is their actual logo. So
yeah,
I think they're definitely below Congregationalists, because at least Congregationalists historically are a confessional body.
That's a good point.
Like they're confessional and they believe in efficacy of sacraments, even if it's the Reformed view. Whereas these guys, most of these churches are pretty non-sacramental. And also think of the state of evangelicalism today. That's pretty much what this represents. Like lots of women's ordination going on.
Would this be including a bunch of non-denom fog machine churches? Oh,
yeah, this includes a lot of your mega churches fall under this category.
Oh, D tier.
So it's a huge umbrella. The issue is some of these are churches where you'll probably find a contemporary and a hymn service that's pretty much your standard Baptist service, and they might be more close to traditional Baptists. And on the other hand, you have fog machine megachurch.
I think top of D is good.
And here's the thing too, if Nestorianism is false, but would Theodosius II or whoever if there was fog machines and people flirting with no sacraments, women's ordination, I feel like he'd be pretty angry about that too, So it's not like you gotta hate on the.
That's fair.
You don't have to hate on the East and be like, you guys are actual heretics because one time a council said that you are. It's fine, you are, but yeah. Anyways, I'm happy with the D.
Okay, D tier. All right, this next one, General Baptists. They literally did not have a logo. I scoured the internet. This is a logo I made pretty much for them. Their confession is from 1679, and it's called the Orthodox Creed. And they have a catechism. They have two catechisms that are used. One of which is called the Orthodox Catechism, and the other one is something I don't remember. But General Baptists are pretty much particular Baptists, but they're Arminians. So they're also a little more Big Tent. So the General Baptists were fine being in communion with the particular Baptists, but not the other way around. So these are just your staple Arminian Baptist is what this represents.
Are they as good as a Congregationalist?
No.
I don't think so. I think they're above their evangelicals. Yeah, because their confession on paper at least has a Reformed view of sacraments. Well, the Reformed Baptist view of sacraments pretty much.
Okay.
But they're just Arminians instead.
And that's definitely a false doctrine that's very close to our hearts because we live in the U.S. in the 21st century, and it's a pretty big thing.
I think they're either here or here, because I think they're your evangelicals, but without some of the more wacky groups. But then they're your Congregationalists, except for they don't baptize babies.
That's a problem. D.
All right, we got D tier. All right, we got this is the Hussites. I have the Moravian Church logo here. Hussites obviously started by Jan Hus before the Reformation. They are in communion with Lutherans at the beginning of the Reformation. At least some of them are. And then Luther actually writes the preface to their confession. So they're all buddied up with us, and then things kind of go wrong later down the road. Today, they're virtually all liberal. The Lutherans, or the people in like the region of Moravia, Czechia, Slovakia, that whole area. The conservative ones are Lutherans now, pretty much, is what happened. They all joined. They have confessional Lutheran church in that area. So today, very liberal. They are still liturgical and stuff, but they kind of got influenced by Pietism pretty hard. Wesley gets like converted to his like Pietist views by the Moravians. But I think like historically, because they're so close to us, I think they're like up in A tier. They are sacramental. They do have like historical roots because they come from Huss. They didn't do well to resist Pietism in the 17th and into the 18th centuries.
Yeah.
Neither Lutherans, to be fair, but Lutherans, stood the test of time for, another at least like 100 years.
Yeah.
So this is the Hussites, right?
Yeah, the Hussites. So theology, very close to us. Liturgy, very close to us. They don't have like the full Book of Concord, but their confession's very similar to the Augsburg Confession. But then they got hit by Pietism really hard. And so they're pretty much all just Pietists now. And at that, they're very liberal Pietists now.
Okay. So it almost
is okay.
It almost sounds like the ideal Hussite's just a Lutheran, and then when you're an actual Hussite, you're just a liberal.
Yeah, kind of what it is now. It's kind of a weird situation. Like on the one hand, they're just like the existing group of them is like this very regional based church. It's only like there aren't Hussites like anywhere else other than the historic region where they come from. And they're super liberal. But then on the other hand, like historically, we were literally in communion with them.
Yeah.
Or at least for a while. I tried to track down when we broke communion with them. Like I found like when we entered in communion with them like really early. Remember Luther says like at the Diet of Worms, das, whatever it is, Darien Hussite or whatever. I don't speak German. He says I'm a Hussite. And then like they enter into communion like when he escapes, and then at some point they break off, but I couldn't find where that was digging around online. I even checked out like old Czech books from the library and like tried to get them translated, and I couldn't find anything. So I think it was during the 16th century though. That seems to be like what the indicators I got based on historical secondary sources.
How many times in this Lutheran chat are you going to say, I don't speak German?
Enough times as it's needed so everyone knows.
Yeah.
That's so hard to rank that one.
Yeah, because it sort of lacks relevance to us, like existentially. But yeah, sure. A is okay.
All right, A it is. All right, we got.
Quakers are better than Hussites. Oh man,
they're at the top. There we go.
You should have put the Quaker oatmeal guy on there, man. You missed an opportunity.
All right. We got this is the logo of the New Apostolic Reformation, or sorry, New Apostolic Catholic Church or whatever it is, not the New Apostolic Reformation. This is representing though the Irvingist or Irvingian movement. So Irving's this guy in the 1800s, like mid 1800s, and he thinks that the end times are coming, and that like that he's like the new chief apostle. He's the new Peter, and everyone has to like join his church now. And so he ordains 12 or 11 other men as new apostles to be with him, and he's the chief of them. And then the world's supposed to like end, but then it doesn't. And so all the apostles die off, of course, in the mid 1800s because they all have normal human lifespans. And some of them ordained like new apostles. And so like they schism into like 6 different groups who all like further schism, and then some of them rejoin and some of them just die off. But they just fragment and they kind of die off because they all don't know who the real apostle is anymore to follow. and they can't agree with themselves, and some of them don't think they're apostles. So kind of a wacky group. On one hand, they are actually like they have like these really beautiful church buildings generally, because like they think they're like they tried to like revive like imagine primitivism, but instead of primitivism, they were like we got to go back to like the early Middle Ages, and so they have like these beautiful Gothic churches and other similar styles, and they like have like these elegant ornate liturgies and vestments and stuff, and they have like this they have their own like new liturgical calendar that they follow like new things with. So they're like in some outward forms they're kind of like cool, but like they're just super whack, like really wacky theology. So
you can't
and they have 3 sacraments, one of which is holy sealing, which is like I think kind of like when the apostles like put their hands on someone. I think that's what they do, and they think this like gives you the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of like chrismation, but without the oil.
I have so little time for sex like this, but
they're like fairly sizable though. I knew someone at work who was one of these at one point at one of my old jobs. I think that I'm not gonna look them up right now. I think they have like 16 million members in the main one and like maybe 1 million in the others. So they're like pretty small, but like 17 million is like still like that's still a sizable group of people.
Yeah, that's actually a decent amount. That's more than I thought there would be in that kind of group.
Yeah. Most of them are in this group, this new one. Whereas like there's a bunch of other like fragmented ones.
I feel like this should just go in F tier, honestly.
What about the buildings? Can you
look at these? Pull up a building? Yeah. Here, let me
the thing is like it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm the Bishop of Rome and I'm like in the apostolic succession, but it's another thing to be like, I'm an apostle and here's what I say we should do.
And then you make a new sacrament.
So, like here's like their most famous church. This is pretty sweet looking.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice.
Here's another one of them. Like, they're like pretty cool. Here's like what one of them looks like. That's really low res. Let's get the actual image.
I like the outside better.
Here's the old Catholic Apostolic Church. Kind of looks like a Vatican II church.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it kind of looks like a lot of Lutheran churches.
True.
Here's one. This is an old Catholic. So these are like there's like the old Catholic Apostolic Church, and they tend to be like higher liturgy and more traditional. And then there's the new Catholic Apostolic Church, which is the vast majority of them, which tend to be a little more like those tend to look more like your typical Reformed congregation. Yeah. Like in look.
Sure.
So I mean, like,
Seth, where would you put them? I don't know, like next to nothing about these people.
They're weird. Let me see where I put them in when I was making my own lists. I put them down I put them down with the Adventists and stuff.
Okay.
Because they're like you have to follow these like apostles and stuff, and they're based on a failed prophet once again.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. That sounds good.
I mean, I think they should be an F tier though, man. I mean, because they're like you have to be in our group. Like I think that makes them worse than Adventists. Yeah, that makes them worse.
I think they are exclusivists or whatever it's called. Let me see.
Oh.
Like I think I could be totally wrong. Let me see ecumenism. Here we go. Political stuff. I can't, just based on skimming, I'm not seeing exactly if they've had discussions with other churches. They're not part of the World Council of Churches. Who cares? Oh, okay. No, all people can participate in communion. So they do practice open communion, actually. So they probably do think other people are. They do probably believe in other churches being valid. But they also have like this weird, view that they have new apostles.
Yeah.
And it could be
And they
that it's
invented
open,
a sacrament.
yeah.
They believe in the universal action of the Holy Spirit. I don't know what that means. Given the fact that the elements of truth can be found in no other Christian churches.
This is all Wikipedia
Like,
too. I mean, like it's
who
all.
knows how accurate this is too. Oh, sorry, they have 9 million worldwide. So maybe there's like 7 million in the other groups or whatever.
Let's just leave them in down with the ad. I mean, because like F tier means you have failed. It means like you have failed at everything. Like you just
Yeah, like
and at
like
least
Quakers
you're
literally
right.
don't have ministers.
They have nice church buildings, so I guess we'll put them in E tier.
they have shiny hats. They have they have baptism.
They do have an Episcopal polity.
Yeah, there you go.
D means you mostly failed. I mean, like D is still you failed. Like nobody gets a D paperback and is like, oh, good, I didn't fail.
All right. This is the UMC logo, I believe, but it's just this is for Methodists.
Wait, Seth, you're still on
Wesleyans.
Wikipedia.
Oh, whoops, my bad. I forgot it doesn't switch tabs when I There we go. Okay, so we got this is I believe the UMC logo. But this is meant to just be Methodists, Wesleyans, Holiness Movement, Nazarenes.
Oh, there's an E tier.
You could like split here. What do you mean?
Okay, I forgot about the E tier because it wasn't visible. Yeah, that's the right place for them. Okay, so now we're on Methodists.
Yeah, I could like split hairs and like try and differentiate like between like these different like parts. Like are Nazarenes their own thing? But like trying to find where to draw the line is really hard. So I just clumped them all together.
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, they were Anglicans, but then like they were pietists and low church, and so they decided to ride horses around the U.S. evangelizing.
Yeah.
Oh, and they ordain women, like not just like as a modern thing, like since Wesley. So like that's a distinctive of their denomination, actually, of their tradition.
Yeah, it's hard because F tier. I mean, it's hard because they actually do baptize babies. So
yeah, and they actually have like, they're pretty sacramental because they come out of a time of Anglicanism that's like, you know, like there's latitudinarianism going on in the 1700s, and so like if you read like the UMC statements on sacraments, they're actually like pretty high view of sacraments.
Right.
Historically, they were like they were like low church, but like it's not like they just like didn't follow the Book of Common Prayer, like. And if you read their like services, like their modern services, they're actually like fairly liturgical still. Not that I don't know how many of the churches follow that, but
I think this is like an easy C tier.
C tier?
Yeah, I think C is fair. I think I want to put them above the Armenian Baptists because they baptize babies, whereas the Armenian Baptists don't.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Yeah, and I wouldn't put them up with like the Eastern Orthodox or Reformed, I don't think, just because they are like Wesleyan Arminians, which is like a fairly strong version of Arminianism, which is pretty different from us.
Yeah.
And yeah, C tier is fair.
Cameron's here.
All right,
howdy.
Hey, Cam. We're on a list alphabetically, just so you know. So we've gotten all these. These are not organized left to right yet, but they're organized up and down. This is Old Believers. This is Eastern Orthodox, but they decided to tell the rest of the Eastern Orthodox that they were wrong for trying to do reforms. And the reforms are like, well, instead of crossing yourself, or instead of doing the blessing symbol like this, you do it like this. So like, you do it like this over the congregation. Instead, you're supposed to do this, is what the Old Believers say. And they also like added 1 or 2 words in a couple spots in the Russian liturgy, just to make them like, I think it's to modernize the language slightly. I think was the idea. and they insist on these things because they were reforms, I think, in like the 1600s or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the sign of the cross, right, is that there was this dispute between them and the Greek Church for a long time about who was actually doing the sign of the cross correctly, and this was perceived as basically capitulating to the Greek Church, and so
Right.
it was a giant issue. Yeah, I took this Russian Orthodoxy class when I was in college, and it was one of my favorite classes ever because of the old believers, actually, because they were kind of like the prototypical religious cult movement. And, really beautiful.
All right.
So obviously S tier.
I think what is interesting about this is that because we got to think about like how are all these things relevant to to the viewers and such. What's interesting here is that the East, like this is 17th century stuff. Like it wasn't just Europe that had reforms and like attempts at reforms and like disputes over liturgical things and who's enforcing what. Like it's I think it was 17th century ish, right? Am I?
This is 1652 to 1666 were the reforms.
Okay, so right around the same time as like 30 Years' War type stuff in the West, and oh wait, no, not S tier.
You said put them S tier though, or no, Camden,
Cameron's trolling
because they're a cult, and so they're S tier.
No, I do think like obviously not S tier. I put them pretty low if we're being unironic, but like it is this cool sort of case study on the role that like liturgy and religious experience like play in the life of the masses, right? Like it was basically a sort of peasants type uprising, right? And it wasn't like a well-reasoned sort of thing, but like in a very real sense, I mean, that was just their like that was basically their culture that was getting like taken away from them overnight, more or less. And yeah, very upsetting.
Marcus says, Marcus Williams, this is Father Marcus Williams of Blessed Sacrament, I believe. That's the name of his parish. Said, I had an EO priest, that is Eastern Orthodox, prove to me some Turks have the arm of John the Baptist because they have skeleton hand making the sign of blessing. But now I know it was the reformed way, so it must be false. He has a good YouTube channel. You guys should check
That's
it out.
awesome.
What do you guys think?
I think just they're Eastern Orthodox, but they have weird things and they're sectarian.
I mean, maybe C tier then.
What are their if their other beliefs just basically Russian Orthodox like boilerplate, but
they're just like traditional Russian Orthodoxy, pretty much.
Yeah. And do they still exist today? Because longevity and staying power
they
is
do. Okay. Yeah, so all of these denominations are still around today. Like I didn't put Lollards on the list because the last Lollards died in the 1830s. And pretty much all Lollards joined like Anglicanism or one of the other like Puritans or something. They virtually all became various forms of Protestant. So like these are only living denominations. However, none of them are that small. I forget how many old believers there are in the world. Let me see if I can get a demographic present situation.
You can also subdelegate to us if you want to move on.
There are 2,600 old believers in Estonia. In Bolivia, there are 3,000. Alaska has 2,500. I mean, they have like under 100,000.
Okay.
They're really small. But are we fine with B or do you want C?
Yeah, just because they're small doesn't mean they're bad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're at the bottom of B then, just because they're sectarian.
Yeah. I don't. We don't want to see the church fracture into like 1,000 Eldanas or something. But
Speak
but
for
they're-
yourself.
Cameron, we're banning you.
Marcus says, question, is that the true Orthodox? I believe I saw this when I was looking up some of these. I think the true Orthodox are like their own kind of thing. Yeah, that's a thing that's since the 20th century. And that's like kind of a movement. It's like not clearly like the old believers I think have their own hierarchy and everything.
Moral of the story: don't ever tell a Russian he's doing something the wrong way, or you might get in trouble.
All right, another.
Yeah, actually,
weird...
funny story. So my uncle, I think this has since changed. Actually, used to be a true Orthodox priest. So that's kind of fun.
All right, old calendarists. This is another one. They're Eastern Orthodox, but they use the Julian calendar. And it's not just that they use the Julian calendar, because there are some Orthodox who use the Julian calendar. They're called new calendarists, I believe. This group is, you have to follow the Julian calendar. So they're another kind of schismatic group. When they tried to do the reforms to introduce the Gregorian calendar, they insisted, no, we have to be 2 days off. And if you don't, you're a heretic.
Right. Yeah, actually, yeah, he was an old calendarist. There's kind of a subtle distinction between, the true Orthodox and the old calendarists because they have similar disputes, But
yeah.
To be fair to these, it's not like obsessing over the calendar is some sort of regressive Eastern thing because try going on to like a Lutheran like chat room or social media and try telling people, hey, I think we shouldn't do Easter Vigil until midnight versus Saturday at 5 p.m. and see how many people blow up in your face and say, no, but we have to do it. It doesn't matter when we do it, or it does matter when we do it. And it's like, a matter of hours. And like, I think you should not say it till Easter is actually here because it's Easter, but like, so the calendar can be important.
5 a.m. I think, or 6 a.m. I forget when we start.
Yeah. Do it on the day. But like, days matter. So.
Yeah, I guess B tier as well, just because they're basically Eastern Orthodox, just with a different calendar.
Are they better or worse than the old believers?
Old believers, yeah, better.
Old believers are better. Cam insists. So
yes,
and Dutch Reformed are better. So like so far, like the ranking is actually pretty good. D and E are just mashed together, but
yeah, we'll go back to those later.
All right, we have Old Catholics, specifically the Union of Scranton. Like the Union of Utrecht is like really liberal. Cam, just so you know, our like up and down tier, since you joined a little later, is pretty much like where the theology of that group is like centered, like what's their historic confession type of thing. And then like left to right, we're doing like what's the situation on the ground today is like relevant to it. So
Tony's
like
idea.
Yeah, it's Tony's idea. So like, even if some group may just be like super liberal today, like Hussites today, like are virtually all like the super liberal, like they don't really believe much. They're like super pietists. But like historically the Hussite like confession is like totally in line with Lutheranism. So we have them in A.
Is it bad to say that the Union of Scranton is A tier?
I think they're A tier.
Yeah, I agree.
Like they don't believe in. Wait,
they don't believe
they break
in.
Off?
They broke off
Vatican...
before Vatican I, so they
yeah.
don't believe
so they're
in
like
yeah.
They're Tridentine Catholics instead of like believing in like dogmatizing papal infallibility, and they also don't have the issues of like Vatican II stuff.
Yeah, and like the Council of Trent is maybe a little bit of a mess, but like you reject infallibility, you expressly like diverge from Utrecht on some things, like all the right things, you go the right way on them all, and it's like pretty cool.
All right, no disputes. Oriental Orthodox, this is the Coptic logo, but they're the biggest ones. So
We've been lazily
are-
putting everything Eastern Orthodox into B tier recently. So, but this is the Miaphysite thing, right?
They're Miaphysites though, yeah. So they
I used to talk to my Armenian friend about this, and I was like, I don't think I have as much of a problem with the Orientals as some would say I should. But you guys probably know more about their Christology than I do.
So on the one hand, there's a lot of people who want to say this is a linguistic issue,
Mhm.
and there probably were linguistic barriers to some degree for a good part of the history. On the other hand, if you read like the history of like what goes down at like Chalcedon and Ephesus 2, which occurs just before Chalcedon, and then the fallout afterwards, like I think it's fairly obvious like which side was correct, and not just based on like exegeting texts or things like that. I mean, like the Miaphysite party at the Council of Ephesus 2 before Chalcedon, they like made people sign blank papers and then wrote doctrine on them afterward. They threatened people with violence, and then some people literally got beaten and then died from their injuries like a few years later. Like that was what the Miaphysite party was doing. And then they also got like they knew they were acting against other like places, specifically Rome. Pope Leo had sent them a letter saying his doctrine and what his position was, and then they pretty much just covertly concealed the letter and didn't read it at the Council of Ephesus too. And then at Chalcedon, when they're asked why, they pretty much say, "We got distracted," which is like very obviously not what happened based on like the acts, like the minutes of the council, which we have like they're preserved and we have them in English. So then there's the whole dispute after Chalcedon. It's not like there is like the linguistic issue stuff, but then you read like Severus of Antioch, who's like their main guy, and he's arguing with Leontius of Jerusalem, who's the main Chalcedonian guy. And it just seems to me, at least, that like Leontius is very right about the theology issues, and that there's a real difference of theology that's more than just language.
Okay.
And like Severus of Antioch is a heretic, according to the Chalcedonians, and Leontius of Jerusalem is a heretic, according to the Miaphysites. So there's mutual condemnations in both directions, and both sides venerate the person the other side condemns.
That's fair.
So, like,
I mean, at the same time, what do we say about the Pope, and what does the Pope say about Martin Luther? So
yeah.
there's and also I know that like pragmatic concerns are supposed to be horizontal only, but the Miaphysite soldiers will kiss a crucifix on their way into battle, which is more than you can say for true. The Europeans. But again,
is this including Coptics in this? The Oriental?
Yeah, this is Coptics, Ethiopians, Syriacs, Armenians, and like the Syro-Malabar church in India.
Yeah,
I think we should. I wish Sherry was on here, then we could ask him what he thinks, because he lives right. Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Sherry, how do you rank the Ethiopians?
Yeah, where do they go, Sherry? Let's see. He was in here earlier, but he might not be there anymore. Okay. He was back at 2:34 Eastern time. Well,
I would put him C, but I don't know.
I think C tier is fine. I heard from a friend once who went to worship with them in like New York. There's a Coptic church up there, and I guess he was saying like in order to receive the Eucharist, you had to like kiss an icon of Christ and stuff like that. So I guess they make you venerate icons.
I mean, so do the Orthodox though, like Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
Nicaea too says you have to do it. It doesn't say that it's like optional. You have to do it, otherwise you're excommunicated or anathema.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we'll put them in C tier then.
C?
At the that sounds good to me.
All right. Next one is the Particular Baptists. This is 1689ers specifically.
I can see that.
I guess we could talk about this first one, the First London Baptist Confession, but it's not that different. There are like some small differences. But yeah, this is Reformed Baptists.
Just like James White.
This is I mean, yeah, James White does profess the 1689. It's debatable how much he actually falls in their tradition.
Right.
You know, maybe a better example would be what's his name? That does he has a YouTube channel too that I'm totally forgetting the name of now. He does like scholastic stuff. Yeah. Josh, what's his name?
I think it's Sommer or something. Maybe
yeah, something like that. Yeah, he is Joshua Sommer. Yeah, I think that's. Hopefully, we're saying his name right. Are they? I think they go in D tier with the rest of the Baptist groups, like Anabaptists, Evangelicals, General Baptists. I don't know where they go left, right, but I think probably at the top.
Unless Cameron has a good reason that they should be higher, which he might have.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me, right? Because I do in a lot of ways see I do think Reformed Baptists actually are, sort of at the forefront of current like doctrine of God debates, and that's
true.
But
that's like a left right issue on our tier list.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to like make an argument for putting them, with the Wesleyans or the Methodists, or like the only case in which I think you could is the practicality element, but that isn't listed on the letter rankings. So I would
do you think that when you say they're at the forefront of the doctrine of God debates, are you thinking of like well, before I guess and embarrass myself, like what sort of figures are you thinking?
Oh, like James Dolezal, people like him.
Okay.
Summer would be another one. Joshua Summers, like as far as YouTube people goes and Twitter people goes, he's kind of a semi-big name.
And I want to be clear here. I'm not like necessarily saying in terms of like sophisticated like people writing in modern university settings. I mean, obviously Dolezal's sophisticated. I'm just saying he's not like Eleanor Stump or something.
Yeah,
it's not Daniel Vecchio, my boy.
Saying compared to us, they do a lot of good work on that, and I think we're more interested in other things.
By the way, this is Congregationalists, Cam. This is not specifically the UCC, but the UCC would be included in there, just so you know for ranking thoughts. I'm good with them at the top of D tier probably.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the best that the Baptist tradition has to offer is probably like a confessional Reformed Baptist.
Yeah. And while I think the General Baptists like probably are closer to us on questions of predestination, because they're pretty moderated view on election. Like they're not taking like generally a strict Wesleyan view or something like that. But the fact that they're just loose and generally historically just didn't stick as much to their guns, like on being like confessional and whatnot. I think the Reformed stand out better.
Yeah.
All right, this next one is Pentecostals.
Oh boy.
They have the red flame. There were a couple red flame examples I could have chosen, but I chose this one.
I would say F tier.
F tier. You think they're worse than our Adventists and our new apostolic, or not necessarily new apostolic, but Catholic apostolic churches are being used?
No, let me. Okay, I'm having a hard time.
We talked about shifting.
So D. Yeah, no, I mean if that's what you're considering as E tier, yes, they're probably at the forefront of E tier, honestly.
And by the way, this bottom one. This is an Nestorian old calendarists at the bottom currently.
Well, is this including like oneness Pentecostals?
I think I assumed when we were making it this would be only Trinitarians, because everyone else here is like a Trinitarian. I guess Quakers disputed. We'll assume the best of the Quakers.
Yeah. The thing is, like, we didn't put in Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. Like,
Yeah.
we just like pumped we milked our own theoretical priors on who is Orthodox. We're like, these are only Christian denominations. If you disagree that someone we've left out is not Christian, then just bad. So what are the
My mic
virtues of
doing a drum thing?
Pentecostalism?
Wait, is my mic doing a weird drumming thing? Is that mine?
I mean, I guess Pentecostals have valid
I think
sacraments.
so.
Well, they have valid baptism.
Depends, honestly.
Well, yeah, like that's why. Like, if you're talking about oneness, no, but
I mean, even with the Trinitarians, yeah, most of the time they won't do that. But there's a lot of real ambiguity within that tradition about baptism. So even in situations in which they're probably not oneness, a lot of them have ambiguous theology surrounding it, and so like this has been an issue that occurs, when LCMS pastors have to reflect on, the validity of Orthodox and SDA Baptist. Did I say Orthodox? Pentecostal and SDA baptisms and things like that, where even if a lot of the time they will accept the Trinity, it's so ambiguous in formulation that it's hard to really say whether they're intending to do the things that we're doing.
the Pentecostals on F tier and the Spirit will leave me.
Yeah, probably. No, in all honesty, yeah, like comparatively speaking, if E tier is, I mean, if E tier includes, the SDAs and people like that, then yes, they're definitely on E tier and probably towards the front of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, Pentecostals are like on the. I guess we can get down to this when we do the practical part of it, but they've contributed so much bad fruit to the world that they've had such a massively bad influence on the world that man, it just makes me want to put them pretty low. But
on Tony's own private stream later, he's going to put everyone else on F tier besides Lutherans.
No.
No, I mean, like, I'm inclined to agree with that, right? As far as the practical elements concerned, because, like it or not, like with like the Methodists and stuff, there's some like unambiguously good things that came out of that movement, and like it or not, out of Congregationalists, there's some like unambiguously good things that came out of that movement. With Pentecostalism, I'm really not sure what I would say that I could really like pay that compliment for. I mean, I guess they emphasize the work of the Spirit wrongly, might I add, but
All right, here's my argument
not
for
trying
them.
to create a flame war, by the way.
Here's my argument for them being an E tier still, is that they don't start from a false prophet.
Yeah, it's just that every pastor at every church is a false prophet.
I mean, maybe, but like these other false prophets like claimed like pretty much like infallibly like something really extreme, and then we're like
That's
really
true.
wrong.
That's true.
So like maybe that's an argument for these other guys being moved down to F tier, but I think the Pentecostals at least like have that going for them.
Yeah.
Okay. You got a good point. Maybe the SDA should be F tier.
Yeah, I'm okay with the SDA being F tier. I really
I told you we'd move them down.
Yeah.
There, now it looks so much more aesthetic.
Based.
All right. Next one
I bet the SDAs didn't realize that they were going to get downgraded.
Us Lutherans, we really have a lot of issues with Judaizing,
But the SDA likes Luther.
Yeah. They'll, when they misquote him to like justify like, their views on the Sabbath.
Yeah, I know.
All right. This is pietism. This is like the symbol of the largest pietist body. I was debating whether that just like counts as part of Lutheranism or not. But like it really doesn't. On the
Yeah.
other hand, like it also kind of gets lumped under Methodists, but they're really their own thing. So I'm including like I think Laestadians, like some of them fit into this group. So like that's like Church of Lutheran Brethren, Lutheran Free Churches, which would be like, you know, there are some of those like AFLC. This would also like include like some groups that are like kind of post-pietist, I guess. Like I guess Evangelical Free Church might fall under this. I don't know if they count as evangelical or if they count as pietist.
I would argue that the Free Lutherans are Free Lutheran congregations are under the Lutheran umbrella, because like even though they don't have like a organization that they're tied to or a synod they're tied to, and like that they wax pietistic, like they do still like believe Lutheran doctrine and like subscribe. They don't subscribe to the formula, but like I don't know,
Yeah,
like
kind of.
do you want to lump
Yeah.
them under like random pietists?
Yeah, I guess it depends at what we want to count as pietist.
Yeah, I would include, I mean, for me, you know, I would definitely put them above Methodist because I think that some pietist theology wasn't terrible, and its fruits are, like Methodism, pretty ambiguous in that lots of good things did come out of it. I think that, you know, it's easy for us to as Lutherans to say that, like, you know, the sort of deep, you know, introspective, you know, spirit, you know, character of it is a little annoying from our perspective. But like at the same time, even Walther Grant's, I mean, you know, compared to like the rationalism that was actually like taking over Germany at the time, it was a pretty good counterbalance to it. And so like as a result, yeah, I think it's pretty good. I would say it. I'd put it B tier personally.
Because is pietism isn't a denomination, right? Like
Right, it's more of a movement, and that's
It's
why
more of a movement. That's it's kind of ambiguous, but like on the other hand, like it's like a movement in one sense, but in another sense, like there are bodies that are very clearly pietist bodies, which is like that clearly are under the pietist tradition, almost as if it's its own thing, which is kind of difficult. And I guess do we count like non-Lutheran pietists? Because there are like non-Lutheran pietists, right? I mean, there are like
right.
there are Hussite pietists or Moravians, and then there are like you know, Reformed pietists, I believe too, and like Anglican ones. Although I think most Anglican pietists are just Methodists, but
I
like,
think
Yeah, I'm fine with C tier then.
yeah, I mean, it's again, like I don't even know if I like. Does the fact that they share this sort of ideological movement, like we don't have a logo for like the trads, even though you could say like, you know, Zion Detroit people and like SSPX people are trads, but we don't have like a trad logo. I feel like the Confession of the Church, and this is something that like maybe like the brief history of power folks might disagree with, but like the confession does matter. Like the doctrine on paper is, I know it doesn't matter as much if you don't live it, but like that's the main thing. But yeah, I don't know. You guys put pietism wherever you want. I can't make too much sense of it.
so
C or B, I don't know.
one way to maybe narrow them down so they're not like so that it's not as vague, and so it's more of a specific tradition rather than like being like just kind of fringe whatever like group of churches that's kind of a movement. We could like restrict it to like the radical pietists who specifically broke from the other churches, like broke from Lutheran churches. So this would include like the Evangelical Covenant Church, which is the one I chose for their logo, since I think they're the biggest one. Here, let me switch screens to them. All right. So we got the Evangelical Covenant Church is radical pietists. group. So they were Lutherans, but then they were like, nope, we're going to be not Lutherans because we're going to be Pietists instead, as kind of like their own thing. So this group would be a lot like the radical Pietists are kind of like, some of them are like Mennonites today. And they're kind of like traditional in that sense, but then they're like, they're Pietists. So like that's what like this group is like radical Pietism. Yeah, like stuff like this. Like, so on the one hand, you have like Schwarzenau brethren who are like totally wacky. And they do like foot washing and the Holy Kiss stuff, and they don't swear oaths. So like kind of like Anabaptist-esque stuff. But then they're like kind of Lutheran. That might help narrow it down.
Our C tier is pretty sparse right now.
Yeah, I think C tier would be fair.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to C tier, having it probably above, horizontally, higher than the Methodists, but like, yeah,
still we're in there.
Fine. I think they're upper C tier. Yeah. Somewhere up there.
We have them there. All right. We'll leave them there for now. That's kind of a funky. I really debated whether I even wanted them in there because it's such a strange group to nail down. All right, next one. This is Plymouth Brethren. They don't have a logo. I really tried. I considered putting like just the Little Flock hymn book as their logo because like that's like the most unifying thing of their movement in their early days. But Plymouth Brethren, these are just your dispensationalists, like not just generally dispensationalists, but like they're the guys who like made dispensationalism, and they did split off and form their own thing because like this was their thing, and so like their fruits have become all these people who believe in dispensationalism. But like that's the central doctrine that makes them distinct. Other than that, they're pretty much just Baptists. I forget if they're more Calvinist or Arminian.
It's one of these English things.
Yeah, so this is the logo of Plymouth. Plymouth, I think it's England. Yeah, or Scotland. I forget. Plymouth, wherever Plymouth is. That's just the seal of the city or county, whatever it is. Province. I don't know.
Put them in E tier, man. just throw them down there.
All right. Are they above?
Let's see.
Wacky. This is the wacky tier.
The thing is, though, like they're just Baptists. They're not like false prophets. Like they're obviously like liturgical iconoclasts. They're like, we need to find like make this pure organization or something. Oh, we offended Cameron. Like D wouldn't be the end of the world, but I don't know. Also, the relevance of them today, I don't know.
I'm just tempted to put them that low just because of how much disarray they've thrown the world and especially our country into.
They really have.
With their crazy dispensationalism, end time doomer people, shouting street preachers. I mean,
the political runoff of dispensationalism has been pretty rough.
Yeah,
like
and
all the movement, all the political decisions that have been based on dispensational theology. There's like so many. It's kind of wild.
They're a big reason why a lot of the populace think Christians are stupid nowadays too. Like, it's because of these people.
Yeah, that's true. I think on the other hand, though, like they don't start from a false prophet, so maybe they're above these guys.
Yeah,
I think that the false prophet people should go in F tier. Maybe, I don't know.
Should we stick the Irvingians down with the?
But the apostolic people have nice churches.
That's
true.
Literally, the reason we didn't put them in F tier was they have nice churches.
That's true. I forgot about that.
They're liturgical. The Irvingians are liturgical and stuff, which is kind of neat. But they're extremely wacky because they believe they have these apostles.
Right.
I'm fine
Did we
with
do
having
primitive
that.
Baptists yet?
But these are the new ones, right?
Primitive.
Not the old ones.
We don't. I didn't have that as its own category. I was
Okay.
like, I put Baptists into like Arminian and Calvinist kind of, and
Sure.
that was it.
Well, those are the new Catholic Apostolic Church, not the old one, right? So they've kind of like admitted that they've started in a bad way, so let's just kind of restart again. You know,
Yeah, I feel like-
they're not trying to stick to their guns.
And some of them,
I feel like-
and some of them, the new ones, the new Catholic Apostolic, which are the majority of them, are not quite as like cool looking. The old Catholic ones like have their more. The old Catholic Apostolic are more liturgical and high church, and the new Catholic Apostolic aren't so much. And they are like sometimes, but like not others.
Okay.
I don't know if that's enough to get them out of F tier or not, but
yeah, like some nice outward forms. I mean, like some Muslim mosques look cool too, but like
Yeah, some communist anthems sound great too.
it's true. Soviet anthem's kind of fire. Okay, Presbyterians. This is the Scottish Church logo. I think right below Dutch Reformed, in my opinion, because they're virtually the same, just with some small differences.
You would know.
That-
What's the biggest difference between them and the Dutch?
Mostly they're like the attitude of their confessions. The Presbyterians, like the Westminster, is very focused on, at least it's more focused on kind of like abstract things and law, whereas the Dutch confession is more focused on practical life and pastoral thought.
Okay.
So actually, let me pull up the blog post on it.
Yeah, link it in the description or something. It'd be interesting.
Oh yeah, I can link it into the chat. Where is it? Here we go. I think the best example really is just reading off the first question of each catechism. That's like, it's so representative of like the different ways they go. All right, so the first question of the Westminster is, what is the chief end of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. The first question of the Heidelberg Catechism is, what is thy only comfort in life and death? That I with body and soul, both in life and death, am not my own, but belong to my faithful Savior, Jesus Christ. So like that shows you the different attitude that's going on between the two. And that's like it's pretty representative of how like they go. The other differences are really small. They're like, one leans more infralapsarian than the other. The Westminster's a lot longer. It like handles way more topics, so you're bound to a lot more things that we may disagree on with the Reformed. Yeah. The Heidelberg has full assurance and firm confidence as part of their definition of faith, whereas the Westminster denies infallible assurance as part of the definition of faith.
Does it deny that you can have it at all, or does it just say it's not part of the definition?
No, just infallible. But the emphasis is the difference. The Dutch are more comfortable with having, this assurance and confidence and being, it's more pastorally oriented, but functionally, like it's more of just a trend than anything else. Like you can pretty much reconcile everything in the two confessions to make them agree with each other with enough nuance.
Yeah.
This is not specifically the Amish, but I couldn't find a better thing to label them as. This is primitivist Anabaptists, because I thought they were distinct enough from your general Anabaptists. Like when you go to a Charis Fellowship church, it looks largely like your evangelical church, just with a few like theological differences that are small. Whereas, I mean, you go to an Amish or a Mennonite or a Hutterite place, and like it's obviously not that.
They make some awesome food.
Yeah, they make good cheese and stuff.
On the one hand, they're like very anti-modernist, which I like. Like like that's like they're they're not going to be all wacky.
And the way that they believe clearly shows up in the way that they live. Whereas, how many Lutherans who supposedly believe in the real presence would run into a burning church to save it, if the church was on fire, as Seth has talked about before.
Yeah. Although that's also a debate on receptionism versus consecrationism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And whether the reserved elements remain.
Okay, but let's
like
just say
the reliquiae.
Let's say oh no, never mind. That would be too bizarre of a scenario. We should have that debate sometime because I actually don't know where everyone lines up. I know we have some of each on the channel, but I'll moderate it because I'm agnostic.
Yeah, I'm kind of agnostic too because like I called myself a consecrationalist, but then whenever I describe my position to some receptionist, they'll just say, "Oh, you're just sound like a receptionist." I'm like, okay.
Coping.
We need to have a debate episode where we all just debate all the controversial, like the not controversial, but the controverted views between everyone in chat.
That'd be fun.
We'll have one on election, one on consecrationist versus receptionist,
Yeah.
one on
in-house
polity. We can do SCOTUS versus Thomist debates on distinctions.
Yeah. I know like me and Cameron are like radical, I'm just joking, but we're like Waltharians, so we'll probably get dunked on.
Yeah, be careful with that. That can get you anathematized these days. But moving on, the Amish. What are they good enough to be
I think they have to go. Like on the other hand, so like on the one hand, they're being like anti-moderns, like neat. On the other hand, like they say like I think I could be totally wrong about this, but like it's kind of baked into their theology that you can't have like for the Amish at least, like electrical stuff and whatnot. Like
yeah, but they'll still come over and use your phone.
Oh, they will.
Yeah. This is why a lot of people.
Okay.
There's a lot of Amish in Wisconsin, and I want to be careful because as you say, like there's all sorts of sort of Anabaptists out there, but there's quite a dislike of them by some other rural folks in the community because like they sort of perceive them as hypocrites or kind of it's not really but to be fair, it's not really only an Amish problem because everybody has the outward form of rules that they follow and then they find ways to get around them. Like of course we all do that. It's just that they do it in a more, since their rule is no electric stuff, then kind of like the whole Judaism thing where, you have certain regulations. And so you find, that sort of stereotype. But
right. I guess that's true. Although like, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I feel like they should go with the other Anabaptists maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're above or below, but keep them there for now.
They only can get. I think they should go above just because they actually do stuff for other people, like make food for them. Whereas the other Anabaptists, they don't.
They love.
The other Anabaptists don't have cool cheese. So
yeah. Have you ever
make above them?
Wait, sorry. What are the other Anabaptists on here that we did?
Oh, that would be like Charis Fellowship. They're very much just like they're very much like your normal evangelical churches.
Oh,
but
sure.
They are distinctly like Anabaptist in a sense. Like they still like see their roots as being in the Anabaptist movement. They definitely like if you track like the lineage of all the people, they come from that. But they're just for the most part they're like your evangelical just down the road.
Yeah,
Charis Fellowship is the biggest one.
I've never seen a Charis Fellowship bookshelf or rocking chair, but the Amish, they have that market.
Exactly.
All right, Quakers, which I think at the beginning we said was our standard for F tier. So
yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Basically nothing
may,
correct.
May or may not be Trinitarian. They literally don't have ministers. They like don't believe in them. They like sit in silence and then just wait for the Spirit to come upon someone, and then that person speaks.
Yep. Well, I mean, St. Paul talks about this, doesn't he?
Some of them believe in the Trinity, though. So, like, some of them believe in the Trinity and incarnation, and they say they believe in the Bible and stuff. So, like, they still fall in the category of Christian.
So they'd be better than like Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Pretty high bar there.
We're assuming the good ones here. We're assuming
Okay.
that the ones that are Trinitarian. I think.
Yeah.
We should do a world religions tier.
We talked about doing that. That was the original plan for the stream. Actually, was going to be that, but then we realized that like we don't like no one in the chat knows that much about like
That's
Jainism.
That's fair.
And
That's
so
fair.
we were like, what are we gonna? How are we gonna rank these things?
Mormonism.
Like, I don't know what Jainists believe.
What's that, Cam?
Mormonism S tier.
That's true.
I mean, honestly, like if we're doing non-Christian religions, yeah, maybe they do get S tier. Honestly, not sure, but
Hey, Mormon women do be beautiful, though.
Sir, this is a
and all their missionaries get cell phones and stuff. Like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is really starting to sound like we're evangelizing for the LDS.
All right, this
Well,
is
we're almost
remonstrance. Yeah, we only got a few left. Remonstrance, which is this is the Arminians, but so like on the one hand they have their 1610 articles of remonstrance, which are pretty much what they're saying, like, hey, we don't like where the reform stuff's going. We actually believe that this Arminian stuff is right. And then they have the 1621 confession. And if you just read it, it actually looks like fairly orthodox. Like it looks like Reformed pretty much, except for that they have pretty much like something very close to the Lutheran intuitu fidei view of election.
depending
but
on
on
your
the other
view of
hand-
intuitive fide, but yeah.
Yeah, depending on your view of intuitu fidei, yeah. Well, the confession doesn't mention anything about foreseen will or decisions. It just mentions foreseen faith in the article. And their article on conversion doesn't mention a positive act of the will either. It only mentions the non-resistance type stuff. So like on the one hand, it looks really Lutheran mixed with like Reformed. On the other hand, like Reformed with sacraments. But then they're also like pretty, not, I don't think Arminius himself, but like pretty much people that directly follow end up being like pretty wacky. Like they want to deny natural theology. They want to be biblicists.
Mhm.
They have kind of a wonky view of the atonement. A lot of them do, like, because they take like this governmental theory of atonement for the most part. So they don't want to go penal substitution direction.
Yeah, I mean that it seems like B or C to me because I mean Lutherans I think should, I mean if you push a Lutheran he should sound probably more like Calvin than Arminius, but maybe not like Beza, but and yeah, I mean weird atonement theory as well. Lutherans have some of that, but it's not really baked into our theology, at least not yet.
Well, and to be fair, governmental theory like isn't baked into their theology. Like it's not in their articles or their confession. It comes after, like a generation later.
Yeah, it's Hugo Grotius comes up
Yep.
with that, and arguably governmental theory, at least for him, was a way of defending penal substitution. Some people take that perspective that this is a sort of variety of penal substitution, and in fact, I mean it's still commonplace to defend Methodism alongside other theories
Yeah.
like PSA. But yeah, I mean, the thing with the remonstrance is, yeah, like as Junius points out and others, right? Like arguably, like on the fundamental articles of faith, Junius was willing to say that like they actually disagreed with the least of any major group actually. Because even on the issue of conversion, right? Like the major difference that he saw was that like basically like the unregenerate will kind of has a slight role in conversion, in that like it. I'll rephrase that. So the natural will, right? With its natural powers, has like a slight role in conversion in that it like permits something to go on, right? and in the Lutheran tradition, even that permission is in a sense, actualized by divine operative grace, or prevenient grace. And so like it's a slight difference that exists there, but like it's pretty small, and even he realizes it. But yeah, the big issue is that like as time went on, because the remonstrants were pretty persecuted, they tended to really lump themselves in with some not so savory sects. Like they had a interesting relationship with a lot of Unitarian groups. Grotius himself, was pretty ambiguous on a lot of these questions. And so what started as, a potentially, Lutheran-esque movement, ceased to be once it, found itself, in conflict and without like the institutional sort of aids that Calvinism and Lutheranism had to fight off liberalism. It really just succumbed to it. So yeah, my ranking, sorry, long-winded there. Yeah, I think B tier is fine.
I'm good with B tier.
Bottom of B.
B. Yeah, as far as a situation on the ground goes, I think they have to go bottom of B because they're a tiny church. Like they didn't do well, and like all of them are well, okay. There's a little bit of debate here. So on the one hand, we could count this as just those who are actually like remonstrants, like people who came from that, which would be a tiny group of people in the Netherlands, pretty much only, and they're super liberal. The other way of looking at this is that like Society of Evangelical Arminians are remonstrants because they hold the 1621 confession. They're technically confessional Arminians, and they're more evangelical, standard evangelicals. I think either way they're B tier because they're like a confessional Protestant, which falls along with these other like confessional Reform groups. But on the ground, it's a definitional issue of if we're just like remonstrants, I mean like 20 liberal churches in the Netherlands, pretty rough.
Mm-hmm.
Society of Evangelical Arminians, like I think they're in a pretty good state. Like they're a small group, but like they're pretty much evangelicals who are like, we need a good confession of faith that keeps us orthodox to like historic Protestant orthodoxy, which is like like in my opinion a positive development. Like if you're going to be just like an evangelical, like have a historic confession of faith that keeps you within good bounds.
Right.
Where we want them, I guess.
Yeah, bottom of B is good.
Bottom of B?
Yeah.
Okay. Roman Catholics.
F tier.
They literally follow the Antichrist.
No, it's the office of the Antichrist.
I think Pope Bergoglio actually is.
At least the Seddies think he is.
Yeah, they're next.
I have nothing against like mid to top B.
Yeah,
I think they're in B.
Noah's employed by them, so he has to defend them.
Noah's a Jesuit.
Yeah.
I don't think they're top of B. I think the Dutch Reformed and Presbyterians are better than Roman Catholics.
Yeah, I think that's a debatable one, and I think you and Seth have different perspectives on that, right?
Yeah. So, on the one hand, I think theologically, like the Dutch Reformed are like, if you read Dutch Reformed stuff, like their dogmatic stuff, and then compare it to ours, it's like, oh, this seems really close. Like on paper, they feel so like close, and that's just like, oh, where do we actually differ? And it's like it's Christology and sacrament stuff, which like goes back to this issue of natural philosophy issues, but like, and maybe the use of tradition to some degree, things like that. So like they seem really close, but then like outwardly, like your Dutch Reformed or Presbyterian church A lot of them look like your just typical evangelical church down the road, or if they are more traditional, like they look like a very stripped down basic liturgy that has hymns. And when I say it's stripped down liturgy, I don't mean like they took the historic liturgy and made it basic. Like they just went down to nothing. It's orderly, but it's not historic liturgy in any sense.
Yeah.
Whereas the Catholics have like, well, this is Vatican II Catholicism, but like,
But even
then,
they
their service. They're outwardly they look like us, which I know is like not a good test of orthodoxy necessarily, but like there is lex orandi, lex credendi. Like their liturgy is largely the same as ours. They're not iconoclasts. On issues of like Christology, they're closer to us than the Reformed. On issues of sacraments, they're closer to us. That's actually probably one good thing that came out of Vatican II is like they pretty much made ex opere operato like not what it was. Like they pretty much have a much closer view to what Lutherans believe now.
Development of doctrine, though, it doesn't contradict anything that came before.
Yeah, supposedly. And like, so like on outward things, they're very similar to us. On a few doctrinal issues, they're closer to us. But on the other hand, they literally like reject like the 5 soli,
right?
Which is not like definitional for Lutheranism, like the 5 soli. Like that's like just kind of a post, it's a later historical like category. But like those are like pretty central to like how we think about things, like sola fide, especially.
Yeah.
My view on this is like, I still think it is ultimately doctrinal, but like, let's think about Eucharistic piety. I remember we were talking in our chat on Telegram about how like if you had to leave Lutheranism and become Roman Catholic, what would change about your piety, and like, or if you were to become Reformed, what would change about your beliefs versus what would change about your actual piety in your life. And people were sort of divided on that. I think that the real presence is sort of the principle of ecclesial unity. Like ultimately, yeah, okay, so there's a sense in which like you've got to agree on your confession and so on, but like, do you commune? Do you receive the body and blood of Christ in the sacrament? Well, then you're part of the church. You are part of the body of Christ, like in the literal sense. And I think that something that even if you read like, and I know that the Reformed, it's hard to pin down exactly what their doctrine is here, but it looks the same. And then there's this tiny little thing, which is like the sacrament of the altar is not quite affirmed strongly enough. That might be a little tweak, but a tweak on the heart of the church is it produces massive, pragmatic differences, I think.
Well, I mean, I think with piety for Roman Catholicism, obviously having the piety of the real presence is a big change, but in all other areas of my life, I'd have to change way more to be a Roman Catholic than a Dutch Reformed. Like, I'd have to start.
Yeah, I'd have the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
except for they're praying to saints. Speaking of it,
that's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, from our
adoration, going to adoration chapel, Christ as a sacrifice.
Somebody is doing a drum on their mic.
Yeah.
Let me mute me and see.
Yeah, I think it was you.
Yeah, it's gone now.
I think what it maybe is like my maybe it's the chord is like hitting. Is it this sound?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Let me fix that. It's just the cord is bumping the back of a monitor, and when I step, like the desk is high up, and so then the monitor like wobbles a tiny bit and touches the cord.
Okay, but talk about like what Cam is saying is true. Like you're gonna go to confession, you're gonna have to say a lot of Hail Marys, for part of your penance. And like there's penance is not bad, but like it's gonna change.
Yeah, that's true. There's all that. That is pretty
big.
There's
adoration. There's offering Jesus as a sacrifice in the Mass. There's doubting your salvation all the time. I mean, it's a sacrilege to receive the Eucharist in mortal sin, and you can't know if you're not in mortal sin.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
I mean, that's a huge practical
That-
problem.
that
Yeah,
is a
Like,
huge
I
and
practical
don't-
obviously, like the Reformed have their own issues of assurance. I mean, that's a thing. But like,
That's
yeah,
true.
even with the devotional things that Seth was mentioning, I think it really just depends on how strict the Reformed person you're talking to is, a, about images and worship and devotion and stuff, because like tons of people take exceptions there within, because confessional subscription for them is a much looser thing. So you'll have plenty of Reformed people with stained glass windows with Jesus in them and things like that. And is that like part and parcel of like Reformed devotion? No. I know next to no Reformed people who act like us in terms of our devotional life, but I don't see any reason why they couldn't. But yeah, I mean, I figured that that's also probably like a distinction between maybe people in this group, because I mean, I have crucifixes, and they're a big part of my devotional life in some real sense. But I've never probably you know because I didn't go to Zion Lutheran, and the churches here all are basically kind of reformed in liturgy anyways. It's like harder to see the huge difference sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, so I lived with Catholics for 2 years, and I went to mass with them in adoration and prayed the rosary with them before I became a Lutheran. And so I lived the Catholic piety for like 2 years. I went to Catholic small groups and all that stuff. And my change of my piety from doing that, as when I moved from like my old Nazarene church to Lutheranism, was like a bigger gap, and at least from my personal anecdotal situation.
So like on my end, to be clear, I was never like in Catholic circles at all. Like I had a few friends who were Catholic, and that's pretty much it. So this is all my knowledge is mostly on abstraction. I've been to Catholic mass, of course, like I'm visiting with friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But like Novus Ordo mass, I've never been to a TLM, or like an FSSP where it's like is it the 1960 or 1962 missal, but in English. I haven't been to any of those. I've been to normal Novus Ordo. So like on the other hand, like I have like prayer beads. Like I don't pray to saints with prayer beads, but I have prayer beads like follow liturgical year. Most of my devotional piety is like based on like following historic services like Compline or Vespers or Matins, daily office readings, celebrating saint days. So like Zion, like we do saint days. Like we do all of the saint days, pretty much all the major ones, and then occasionally a minor one here or there. And we do the first, second, and third class feasts for people who want to know. And then like we'll do like if we happen to like our St. Michael liturgical conference will be whatever feast is for that day, since it's not on Michael Mass. It's always on a Monday. Which I guess could be a Michael miss, but usually it's not. So like on the one hand, like, and I think once again it's an outward form issue though. So like I probably should just trust your judgment that if you think it's a bigger gap, because I've never like actually been in a situation where doing like I'm not praying to saints or anything. You make a good point about penance. That is a pretty huge change to piety and not knowing if you're in mortal sin.
Well,
like,
and
go ahead.
I've had conversations with, of course, this is going to be an empirical statement, but I've had many conversations with Romanist like thinking people, and it is quite striking to me how many of them don't seem certain of their salvation. And you can talk about the dogmatic things that they've said on and on that subject, but it's like, I hope for salvation. There's a sort of some kind of pall over it. I don't know. And the thing about what's so hard about like Romanist theology is it's really hard. It's probably the hardest denomination to brand as a sect, for the specific reason that in terms of number of people, sheer size. They look large. In terms of material wealth, ignoring the state of the Vatican Bank and things like that, you've got all the stuff is owned by them, and so it looks like, at least in the West, it looks like they're the main ones, and they have this sort of material claim to everyone breaks off, and so it's hard to look and say no, like the one vulnerability to that, of course, is doctrine. And it's on precisely the issue of doctrine where they have this sort of understanding of development to where they're sort of immune to that. Because, like, oh, do you think that like unum sanctum was actually meant X? Like, well, no, like, well, we've never, like, Lumen Gentium, we've never taught that. And it's just this really sort of I don't want to say it's Jesuitical, but like it is a sort of like finagling. And when we talk about the sedes, I'll have more to say on that. But
yeah,
I guess
that's a good.
also,
Go ahead.
We also have the issue of the philosophy of the Jesuits, which like is pretty rough. Like the fact that Catholics literally pushed for Pyrrhonism, like strong skepticism, because they wanted to defeat Protestants, and then that pretty much like created this skeptical vacuum in the academies, which pushed like tons of philosophical issues, like tons of foundationalism came out of that, and weird Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment issues that kind of ruined a lot of classical philosophy. Like they kind of caused modernism in some sense. They at least pushed it forward very hard.
Yes, but
The
you see,
Catholics
that's not
were the real modernists.
Yes, but see, the beauty of it all is that Jesuits, you can think the Jesuits are wrong about everything except for their oath of fealty to the Pope. That's not real Catholicism that you're debunking there. You're just debunking the Jesuits. You see, you Lutherans, you don't get it.
Just the Jesuits,
right? Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, because I was about to say, like, Catholicism does have a lot going for it in that they have done a lot of good in the world. They have a good influence on the world. Like, they run a lot of hospitals, a lot of charities, a lot of foster homes and stuff like that. But at the same time, Jesuits. So you just kind of
no. I was being sarcastic. It's like because whatever you're going to criticize about Rome, that's not really what Rome is.
Right.
You're missing the mark. No, the material benefits can't be understated, and that goes back to what I was saying about you divorce, you have a divorce. A reformation's a divorce, and somebody gets the kids, somebody else gets the house, and it's messy, and but
right. Yeah, I guess the only thing is, from a practical piety standpoint, is while there is a lot of cool and good piety things in Catholicism, at the same time, I think me being scared every time I go to bed at night is a pretty big reason for me to not put it above Dutch Reformed.
Of course, there is also that same issue over in the Reformed world.
That's true.
Although I'd say it's less of a problem in the Dutch Reforms.
They're more gospel.
Yeah, the orientation is more gospel focused, but you do still have the same issue of the double predestination. You fall into despair or what's the word when you have too strong or presumption. Or hypocrisy too, but presumption or despair is what I was thinking.
Oh, security.
Yeah,
being
secure in your sin versus being despairing. Like Calvinism kind of has the same problem, but I do agree that the Dutch have less of a problem with that than the Presbyterians generally.
So maybe I'd be willing to compromise, me in the middle, and put Catholicism above Presbyterian.
Yeah, I agree.
This would be hilarious.
Cam has been trying to say something, guys.
Oh, sorry.
No, that was actually the solution I thought of too, Cody.
So
there we go. We have these two denominations that are virtually in disagreement, with Catholics splitting them.
That's very wonderful. Only a Lutheran would think of something like that. And the Jesuits are Lutherans, as Mays has shown. Like, we tended to agree with Molinist over the Banyas crowd, but that's a whole nother. When we have our big debate on intuitive fide and other things, we can talk about that.
Yeah, you would chill for the Jesuits, though.
I would not, actually. I have yet to read James Dominic Rooney's article on Banyas, but I am sympathetic to the Dominicans. Actually, but we could talk about that another time.
Yeah, no, I also am, but like I take neither position. But
Well,
I
I'm a
do think it has
Bonaventure
a
fan,
higher
so
chance of being true personally.
all right,
Okay, last two.
State of Vacantists.
Oh boy.
Is there a tier above S?
Well, okay, they have no bishops, right?
Well, okay. So they do. So there's a bunch of State of Vacantist groups, and I didn't. So there's also State of Privationists. I don't know which one we want. Like, if we want to count them as all part of this umbrella or not. They're different, but these are groups that are Catholic but think that the church went wrong at Vatican II or just in general the liturgical reforms. So they pretty much think the last pope is the pope. Which one is it? The pope prior to Vatican II. I forget which one that is.
I forgot who it was, but it was the Pope before John the 23rd. Or
Yeah.
something.
So yeah, so some of the groups. So like I see Peter Diamond type people. He doesn't believe that he has any bishop, I think, in his jurisdiction or whatever. That's what he says.
Right.
But others do, because there was this guy I think who's Vietnamese, who was a bishop consecrated by the previous pope, and he becomes State of Vacantist and then consecrates other people. And some of those churches have their own pope, like a new pope that they believe is the right one, and others don't. And there's a few groups of them, and they're different. And I think there's disputes over which ones are in communion or not. There's also like the Palmarium Catholic Church, which has like one congregation that has like 1,500 people, and they literally rewrote the Bible because they thought the Bible had tons of errors in it.
That's great.
But that's not most of them. Most of them are not that group.
I think it's clear that they can't be at the same level as the Scranton Union because, they still, at least Scranton should be higher than them in some sense because, the Sedes are still like, we still believe in, Assumption, Immaculate Conception, and we still follow the Pope. We just don't think that it's the right Pope. And now we're like a huge mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like very legalistic too, honestly, like in terms of they're piety.
More legalistic, yeah. And they're also like on the one hand, Vatican II is like a disaster, but like it's also in some ways it is better. It makes some improvements in the sense that like they fix some of their views on like sacramental issues about like ex opere operato stuff, whereas like the State of Vacantists are going to be like hardline Vatican Oneers, and so like they're going to be super hard against like Protestant stuff, whereas like the Vatican II people are going to be a lot more open to it.
Vatican II did not fix the thing; it developed it.
Oh, yeah,
it was always correct. It's just
yes,
yeah.
Right.
Still trying to keep his job here.
Yeah, those Jesuit colleges, they're really, really strict about, doctrinal conformity.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, if you don't say a Hail Mary before every class period, you get in trouble. Actually, I think you'd get in trouble if you did do that. So,
right.
Actually, I know you would. So, anyways,
I feel like I want to put them above Catholics because Vatican II has so many bad issues, but I don't want to put them like above. I don't know if they need to go above the Dutch Reformed though.
Yeah, it's such a tough issue, right? Because I would say like the best of modern Catholicism, like, normal Orthodox Roman Catholicism is like better than, the SETIs, but like
yes.
Much of modern Catholicism is also a liberal hellhole. So
yep.
It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, and they're huge syncretists and praying in mosques and stuff. A SETI would never do that.
And let's not forget about the just the sort of rank paganism at the levels of like ordinary, your ordinary Catholic that's like, oh yeah, I've got my St. Anthony statue and I go to mass once. It's like, as much as this, my big gripe with like, the Sedevacantist, it's like any sect is going to obsess over the thing that like, it broke over at the beginning, especially if it's a small movement. The way that Lutherans sort of obsess over justification by faith, which is, by the way, a great thing to obsess over. And so like they make it their whole personality that like Francis isn't the Pope. And it's like, okay, like that's not something you can really build on. The Latin Mass might be, but
well, Sedis are also Fatima worshippers, like straight up. Like they're in.
Yeah, that's true. They are. They're super hard on Fatima stuff. And also, we don't really like the Latin Mass on the one hand, liturgically, like setting aside the Latin part, it's it's closer, honestly, to historic Lutheran liturgy. But then it's literally in Latin.
Well,
which is like a pretty big problem. Like
I've been to a TLM and like honestly, like one thing that Luther did is it actually makes it to where you can actually participate in church when he reformed the Mass. In the Latin Mass, you're just an observer. And that's how they actually teach you in Latin Mass. It's like the Mass isn't about you at all. It's just about what the priest is doing. So you don't have to participate in anything.
So do people at Latin Mass not do the bowing and crossing and kneeling and all the stuff?
Well, they do, but it's like if you don't know Latin, it's like you can't really.
Oh yeah, I mean, like if I went to a Latin Mass, I would know all the things because I know them in English. Because Zion's Rite is like nearly identical to the Latin Mass.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing that you can go through the motions enough that you can basically get what's going on. But like, yeah, even if you know Latin, and I by no means an expert, but I took 3 semesters when I was in college, and like it was pretty hard to follow along, even with that in mind. So like you would have to be pretty skilled at Latin, especially given the pace that the readings are happening at. It's not like they're just like pausing at specific words, right? They're pretty much just reading down, a book, which is how Latin was historically read, right? There weren't like all these like spaces and stuff, but like it does make it difficult. And I really wasn't that impressed. Like, obviously, there's a lot of elegance involved in the Latin Mass, and I can understand why people like it. But like, I previous to that Latin Mass, I went to, Wolfmueller's church earlier that day, St. Paul's in Austin, and Wolfmueller's church, which again, great church, probably not even the highest church on earth. I mean, what you experience, Seth, and others, I mean, is probably even more grand than that. Like, it was just 4 times as edifying, and while, it wasn't as ornate, it was pretty impressive to actually see everyone joining in on the service and, having the service actually, have meaning.
Yeah, the fact that it's in Latin is a pretty big issue.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe that puts them below Catholics.
Well, and
just like the fact that you literally do your services in a language that nobody can understand. Well, not nobody, but virtually all of the congregants probably don't, unless they happen to be people who, were raised in classical education and are great at Latin.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, see, and ultimately this is what I wanted to say about them earlier. Like, you might think that they've purified things, but by virtue of adopting Vatican I and papal infallibility, you're adopting the same principle by which you got Vatican II eventually anyway. Because, like, okay, you might have said, oh no, the Roman Church would never, like, the infallible chair of St. Peter would never give you something like that. But we still have this idea that there's an infallible chair of St. Peter. And so, like, eventually SSPV is going to have a pope that half of them don't think the Roman Church would ever do something like that. And so there's this falsifiability problem where it's like, okay, on the one hand, for like your Orthodox papists, like what would count as a falsification of infallibility? And if you can't tell me what that would be, like, I have a hard time, taking you seriously. But then on the other hand, if you are a sedevacantist, and it's like you're trying to hang on to this thing that and you have a falsifiability criterion, but it's like you're still trying to hang on to the infallibility thing, and that's going to bite you someday anyway.
Right. Yeah, you just need to read more First Peter 5 blogs, and then you'll understand. But yeah, one thing with like the TLM and the SEDIs is they make it to where they only give communion in one kind. Like they only give you the host, they reserve the chalice, and that's another.
That is a pretty big issue.
Yeah, that's another thing that makes me want to put them below regular.
Okay, let's
Catholics.
put them below. Let's put them below. That's where it should go.
All right, below they go.
And below okay.
Should they go below or above the Presbyterians?
Below the Presbyterians.
They also have they also believe the Pope is Antichrist though.
That's true.
That is
So
true.
The current one anyway.
But unfortunately, they don't think the office is. So
yeah, not the office, just the current one.
Yeah.
They also pretty much all of them think that we're in the end times, which I don't, I'm not gonna say where we are, we aren't, but that's something to consider.
It
They
almost
kinda
seems
have this,
like. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I say they're kind of like apocalyptic
Yeah, they
in
are.
a sense.
It almost seems like Brother Peter Diamond's commentary on Revelation just took it out of Luther or something and just said it was about the Pope.
yeah, no, that was my favorite thing when I watched Diamond's debate with that non-SETI guy on whether Francis
It's
was
an
a pope.
SSPX guy actually, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So it was a traditional Catholic who SSPX has kind of shaky grounds, but I believe his parish is in for the most part is in communion with Rome. So it was an SXPX guy versus Peter Diamond, who's Sede.
It was funny because Peter absolutely dominated that debate, and you could tell the other guy was intelligent, and Peter just destroyed him, and he destroyed him specifically because he made a bunch of arguments that if he were consistent, he would basically be a Lutheran. he sort of appeals to this church within the church distinction.
Yep.
And he also appeals to this look, in the last days it's going to be really, really hard to
Yeah. He's like, the church is invisible at one point, I think. He actually says that. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
He's like a Lutheran but believes in the Council of Trent. I don't know.
You want to move on, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just leave him there.
Yeah, just have the Presbys who watch the stream tomorrow,
Our friends at Iranic Protestants are going to be salty. All right, Waldensians. This is the last group. Well, if any of you has questions, you can put them in chat too, and we can get to questions at the end. If you want priority, you can donate. Donations are going to the Weiss family, as we mentioned earlier in the stream. And you can also just donate by the GoFundMe link in the description or up in the chat, and I'll stick it in the comments. All right, Waldensians. These guys are these come from Peter Waldo. So these are the earliest proto-Reformation people, earliest proto-Protestants. They still exist today, though, in really small numbers. Most of them just became Reformed of other varieties. So that's where most of them went. But the ones that are left do have a confession of faith. And they're pretty much Reformed, but their confession of faith is really short. And so you don't have to commit to as much. So you don't have to confess as many Reformed specifics as the other Reformed groups, but they're Reformed on sacraments is the big thing. Other than that, they're kind of just general Protestants.
And isn't the case that that this was around the time of Innocent III and the real power consolidation, something by Rome? And my understanding is that they didn't really have dogmatic They were very ascetic and stuff, but it was more
Yeah.
like we just don't like the bishops telling us how to preach and like who should preach and stuff like that. So it was really like a gripe over episcopal oversight.
Yeah.
More so than, I mean, surely there were reasons for it, but like,
That
yeah,
is
I think
pretty
it
much
would
what
have
happened. That's
probably
accurate.
just developed into an order, if situations were different, right? But like, yeah,
seems like a C tier to me.
I
Yes.
think they're, I don't know.
I mean,
Like,
maybe B
I think they're
tier.
above the Dutch personally, but
Oh, really? Are they that good?
well, I mean, they're just, if you go to like, I guess like today, like a typical Waldensian church, it's just going to be like a Reformed church. Like it's pretty much what it is.
But is their
like
confession better than the Dutch?
It's just smaller, which means you have to commit to fewer things. I don't even know if you have to commit to Calvinism. I can check real quick.
Oh, I
Give me-
see. You think of committing to less things as good because you're committing to less bad things instead
Yeah.
of more good things. Oh,
yeah,
see,
that's
that's
how I
interesting.
think of it.
Yeah,
Because like the
I
things
would
you
agree.
do
I
have to
mean,
commit on are good.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, they're associating with Bullinger and people like that more than the more developed Reformed thinkers, and that means bad things when it comes to the sacraments. But like even there, like Bullinger's vague enough that he could agree with Calvin, and he also tends to have a lower doctrine of predestination, and seems to unambiguously hold to some form of unlimited atonement. So that's the case, then that's based.
Okay.
So
Good, top of B.
their
Maybe
entire
they are above. Yeah.
their entire confession is 3 pages long in 12-point font and with
Wow.
smaller margins. So it would be 3 pages. No, it's 2 to 3 pages of 8.5 by 11 is the entire confession. Here, I'll just share it on the screen real quick. Let's see, share this tab. So like they confess the Apostles' Creed. They have a couple articles on, they believe in God, the scriptures. They have a small exposition on God, being infinite. So he's omnipotent and omnipresent and stuff. Like I say, I would say omnipresent, but it's implied. I think Article 4 is implying we agree with everyone else on the doctrine of God issues. And then they just have pretty much this basic, like, standard Christian stuff about the creed here. They reject purgatory. And then the sacraments issue at the bottom here is that, they take the sacraments in a more symbolic direction. It's not super clear, though. Like, if you read this, we consider the sacraments as signs of holy things or as visible emblems of invisible blessings.
I guess you could have written that.
Yeah,
You could interpret this a lot of ways, but I think it is trying to profess the Reformed view. Granted, this is from 1489, but Honius is around at that time. Not Hunius, but Honius, who comes before. He's confessing more something close to the Reformed view.
I don't like that all these Reformed denominations are going higher than like Rome and Constantinople. Like something inside me doesn't like that, but it could be a bad thing.
yeah, you need to repent of that.
I don't know. when I interact with like Catholics, like when I interact with like the typical
Roman
Reformed person on Facebook and stuff, or just like online and like Twitter comments and things like that, like the typical like Reformed people just like feel so far away. But then like you talk to people who are really familiar with Reformed scholastics, and I'm like, oh wow, you guys are like really close to us.
Yeah.
Right. Because
And then when I
university
interact
is a
with,
peak. Everyone meets there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you talk to like the Reformed on the streets, typically like even like a Presby, and I think probably a different situation with the Dutch Reformed, they'll probably see themselves as being, definitionally closer to the Presbyterians than Lutherans, to the point where a lot of Presbys and a lot of Reformed Baptists I met, are very concerned about the salvation of Lutherans, right? While historically speaking, that was not the case. The Baptists were seen as these like fundamentalists, right? And the Lutherans were seen as like, yeah, I mean, they're screwed up and everything, but like all in all, like we should be in union with each other. That was the predominant view amongst the Reformed. And so, yeah.
Yeah, Eucharistic piety though.
Yeah, the Eucharist
Like-
pie is pretty big.
But-
That's an important thing to me.
But like
I
also
also
we have
like the
to.
quality better.
I feel like
Kind of.
there's no winning on the Eucharistic piety thing for me personally, because at least as a Lutheran, I do think like Roman practices with the Eucharist are sacrilege. So
Like the-
Yeah, there is that
procession?
issue.
well, like the Corpus Christi, adoration, the Mass, like I don't like any of those things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the procession is obviously, I mean, something we've always had an issue with, and it's not really tied to receptionism or not receptionism. It's, tied to the no sacrament without use principle, which is independent of that whole debate. And so yeah, I mean, from our perspective, it would be idolatry if you were doing it like consistently and with full assent. Now, I mean, I can say like very upset that when I went to Latin Mass, I did bow and I caught myself and I was very upset about that. So I think that some people don't, fully understand what they're doing, right? And
At the procession in the Mass?
yeah, I
And
did.
we do that at Zion. We
Well-
all bow.
Well, yeah. I don't think there's an issue with that, but I think doing it to. I mean, the understanding at least, bowing to the Eucharist. Sorry, the Eucharistic host, which is being moved in a procession, is that this is latria in a broad sense, right? And typically, the more consecrationalist Lutherans would probably say that that's acceptable to do at the moment of consecration. But even those of us who aren't consecrationalists, we would typically just say, well, because I would bow also at the consecration of the Eucharist, is that this is being set apart as a sort of holy space, and it is a pious action to do that sort of thing. And there's lots of Old Testament examples of that. Kind of the explanation that's given in like the Anglican, black rubric, for why they would do that sort of thing. So I think that, like, again, why did I bow? Probably because of, the sort of habitual tendency that I have to, bow at like the processional cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is something different going on there, and I was at least, physically cooperating with theology that was less than stellar.
All you have to do is say in your head, Julia, 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 and then it becomes okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, at Zion, I should clarify, is this procession in these Catholic churches? Is this happening at like the beginning of Mass or whatever, or I'm good? When is this occurring? Like at Zion, this occurs specifically because not altar guild, the chancel party. So everyone helping in the service. So like our deacon, our subdeacon, thurifer, crucifer, all these people are up front and receive the Eucharist first, and then like the thurifer, crucifer, if we have like acolytes holding torches, torchbearers, they all go to the transepts, which is the area between the nave and the praetor. So like this is the area between, and so then when the elements get brought down to commune people like at the like front rail of the pews, this is people who have a hard time going upstairs and things like that. They just commune there from the front row. That's when we're bowing, because the host and the wine are being processed. So
Right.
I don't know if you're saying I always thought of it as latria because it's Christ that's being processed from one spot to another.
Yeah.
And so we're bowing to Christ.
I think the question is whether this is a valid application of the no sacrament without use principle here, and whether what's being done in the Eucharistic procession is necessarily a violation of this. I think it pretty clearly is in these services, and I think Tony's been to some where, the only thing that's going on is Eucharistic adoration, right? And
Yeah, that's not what's happening here. Ours is in the context of the
Right.
it's in the distribution.
Right.
It's just being brought from the altar to the front pew, and you're standing in a space that is between those two. And so you
I
bow
think that's
during the procession.
acceptable because it would be if you're a consecrationalist, it clearly is within the context of the use prescribed, and if you're a receptionist, it is in the midst of distribution, and as such becomes a holy space, as it were, right? And so
Yeah.
you can view it from that angle.
All I remember is, and this is as Protestant as I get, I went to a Thomistic Institute event, which are my favorite Roman Catholics, the TI people, and there was an evening. Boy, I'm not a liturgics guy. It was maybe like a Vespers with adoration before or after, and there was like the deliberate movements were so reverent in terms of like, very slow, very careful, displaying of the monstrance and so on. But then it came time, to sing a hymn or something, and the priest had to say, if you can't sing, please sing quietly. And it was actually I almost was just like, nobody could sing. It was a bit surreal. So then I thought, you know what? It's nice to be in a church where hymns are kind of a big part of it.
Yeah, it's hard for me. Honestly, I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to like piety things, because obviously I would never want to be in a church without the body and blood of Christ. Like, it's depressing to even think about that. But at the same time, it's like a lot of other areas of my life would have to be like radically different if I was a Catholic too. So it's like, it just makes me want to freaking be depressed to think about either of them, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one, right? Because even on the justification by faith issue, it's the Reformed have their own spin on that. Obviously, this is one of the points Pieper makes, right? Is that there's a real sense in which the Reformed take on the objectivity of the word is like not really justification by faith in the way that Lutherans say it is. And so like as a result, like yeah, I'm not gonna say that. Like, I would still say at the end of the day, even on the objectivity of the word question, it really just depends the Calvinist that you're running into. Someone like Davenant has a pretty high view of that, but yeah, more or less, there's like big issues with each tradition, I think, and at the end of the day, it's like I comparing antinomianism to legalism. They're both just really bad errors, and you should avoid both of them.
Yeah, at least with putting Waldensians above Catholics. Okay, this is my last thing I'll say. Following the principle of subscribing to less errors thing that Seth was pointing out, Catholics, you have to subscribe to a whole lot of stuff, like a lot, like way more than you would have to like the Dutch Reformed and stuff.
Yeah, the Dutch Reformed, especially given how small their confession is, like it's not tiny, but like given that it's actually not that big, it's like you do have to subscribe to way fewer like obvious errors.
Yeah. Right.
I think we kind of organized this tier B. Did we organize the rest of these very much? I don't know how organized some of these lower tiers are. They're kind of organized. I know we said Baptists above these guys.
Yeah.
But are Anglicans above our Hussites and Old Catholics?
So I think it depends on how broad you're being with Anglican, right? Because and also how broad you're being with Old Catholics too, right? Because
Yeah, this is supposed to be the Union of Scranton type, so we're not talking about like Utrecht.
right, and presumably GAFCON and people like that for the Anglicans, right?
Anglicans, yeah, we this is kind of broad Anglicanism, but we weren't like specifically referring to like Church of England necessarily. This is ACNA would be included in here. I forget
REC.
which all groups are in GAFCON. I forget now.
Yeah, well, a bunch of churches in like Africa. I think ACNA is as well. The REC, I think, is in there. And
Okay,
yeah,
that would those would all fall under here. The Anglo or I think it's the Anglican Catholic Church, the APCK or whatever. All these kind of continuing Anglican groups, they would all fall under this.
yeah, I feel comfortable with that. I mean, the thing with old Catholicism, and there's a lot that I respect about it, is that that there are limitations to how good it can be, inherently speaking. And while that also means that there's limits to how bad it can be. Like, the thing with Anglicanism is, there's tons of Anglicans who quite literally, outside of confessional subscription, agree with everything that I believe. Like, quite
Yeah, that's
literally,
true.
quite literally nothing changed when they became Anglican, except that they decide to be Anglican, right? And I think that that's obviously, I mean, it's a plus to the movement, but it's also a negative, because with the movement that is that malleable. I mean, it also means that you can be in communion with say some like Owenian, low church,
Yeah.
semi-Zwinglian, or you could be in communion with quite literally a literal Romanist, or you could be in communion with some Wesleyan who happens to pastor his church as though all of them are unsaved.
Yeah, I think they should be at the top simply because of the flexibility that makes them close to Lutherans. And like we said, left and right is like also has to do with the state on the ground. Like Hussites confessionally are closer to us just because their confession's in agreement with ours. But then like on the ground, it's like this tiny church of like liberals.
Yeah. And I will say, yeah, the thing with
Honestly, maybe they need to be lower. I don't know.
I'm fine with that. I don't. Hussites are irrelevant to me. I don't like
maybe they need to be there.
Yeah, bottom of A is fine.
Perfect.
Because like at least like the Polish National Catholics who are part of this, like they're really like they're like active. Like you hear about them in the news because they're protesting abortion and stuff. Like they're doing like good things. Like these 16 liberal congregations in the Netherlands. They're like included here for historical reasons because like they were like a big player in the Reformation. But like,
right.
Yeah.
I think we spent a lot of time on B tier already.
Yeah.
Need to be.
Yeah, B tier is good.
C tier,
I'm
Pietists,
actually fine with this.
Orientals, Congregationalists, Methodist, Wesleyan, Holiness, Nazarene.
Yeah,
I put the Congregationalists at the top, but other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
the top.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like Congregationalist, Methodist, I think there's like a debate to be had there, but
yeah, I do like Methodist polity better, but I think that's also one of our disagreements here. Are we going to debate connexionnalism over real congregationalism? Not synodalism, but congregationalism versus connexionnalism.
Yeah, no, that would be fun to debate.
We could.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost feel like Methodists should be above Congregationalists because like their outward forms are closer to ours in my opinion. Like because they do have a more structured church. Like it's closer to most Lutheran churches in terms of structure. Like connexionalism is one of those, like it's one of the moderating positions. Like it's not as hierarchical as Episcopal churches. It's not as congregationalist as real congregationalism. Whereas like, Wells in Missouri are like, synodalism it's pretty close to congregationalism. But then on the other hand, when you actually compare us to real congregationalism, like functionally, like we look Episcopal by comparison, because like we actually have like a president and like a hierarchical structure.
And Walther does actually, so in Church and Ministry, or one of his other works, he does verbally deny that we're Congregationalist in the way that that term is being used in the
for this
English
context.
But yeah, I mean, the stress being on independency and things like that, and we've always been keen on saying that superintendencies and synods in general are good things, and in a real sense they're almost divinely mandated.
I think the Wesleyans also, since they like, at least on paper, like their view of sacraments is higher than Congregationalists too, and their liturgy historically is pretty close to the Anglican liturgy, just more pietist and low church, but it effectively is an Anglican liturgy.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have Wesley's service book that he made for America when he sent over the missionaries, I think Asbury and Coke, and yeah, I mean, I actually still to this day I typically use it as my main devotional prayer book, because it's just it's a pretty neat little book, and I like the typesetting.
Yeah, you've convinced me, Seth. I think Methodist should go
Methodist above.
Yeah.
The Congregationalists on the ground today too are like super, like they're all super liberal. Like if you drive past any of them, they almost always have like an LGBT flag out. And I know a lot of Methodist churches are pretty liberal too, but they're but at least like in the UMC and stuff, like a lot of, like a good portion, like held their ground on the issue.
Yeah.
And like are not splitting, but they're also like Wesleyans, like Wesleyan free churches and free Methodist churches that are more conservative leaning.
Yeah, I think that in the Methodist church there's like a real urban-rural divide here too,
Yeah, there is.
Because like, I remember I went to a Methodist church briefly growing up. Yeah, no indications of any real theological liberalism at that time. Very brief period, mind you, and I was young, but my parents never saw anything that was super weird, and yeah, but then when you go to like any city and you look at their Methodist church, it's like the gayest thing on earth. And sorry, not that there's anything wrong with that, YouTube.
I have no problem with it. It's equal.
Yeah.
State mandated.
Amen.
We got a pop up. Okay. Later. All right. D tier. I think we hammered this one out pretty well. Are we still good with the Nestorians being below the Anabaptists and above the Plymouth Brethren?
They should be above the Plymouth Brethren, but
yeah, I think so. Just because the effects of Plymouth Brethren have been so awful.
But because they're Nestorian, I guess we can keep them below the Anabaptists. They at least should be below the Mennonites, because the Mennonites make cheese. The Nestorians have done nothing but bring heresy, so they can't.
Yeah, I know. They should really be grouped in with the Dutch Reformed and Presbys.
There's a difference between like having theology that leans too close to Nestorianism and literally venerating Nestorius.
Yeah. No, I kid. Like in my thesis, I basically argue that like these charges are actually like nonsense, but like I still think it's fun. Just like the Reform call us Eutychians. It's like playful jabbing.
All right. In E tier, we have Plymouth Brethren, Pentecostals, and old calendarist historians. What a group.
I like the
how do we rank
Pentecostals
these?
found their way to be that low.
The Pentecostals should definitely be that low.
Should they be above or below the Plymouth Brethren?
I don't think well, okay, the only reason Plymouth Brethren are that low is because of just how like terrible they've been in the whole world. But I would say like Pentecostalism is worse theologically, probably.
Yeah,
Because they have all the
clear.
same, they have almost all the same problems as Plymouth Brethren, but with extra added on like problems.
Yeah, they're almost all dispensationalists. Yeah.
Dispensationalist theology and that sort of mindset. Like, as much as we want to criticize it, they were one of the major groups in the English context who was, defending, the authority and integrity of the scriptures, right? There was a real like higher criticism and things like that where, the English church, fought them off for a very long time, but it's coming to the point where that was becoming a real issue. And so like for a while they were a conservative body, all things considered. I think the issue is that they just happened to infiltrate quite literally every single church in America and ruined it.
I think that alone makes them like that alone puts them down in E tier. Like,
yeah.
What about the evidence that Nestorius was falsely charged?
I don't think it's necessarily that relevant, actually, because they still rejected the Council of Ephesus.
Yeah, I mean that's Luther's take basically, is that like he, and on the churches and the councils, he's kind of ambivalent about whether Nestorius actually taught it, and he thought, he was obviously being charged with a lot of unsavory things that there wasn't like a lot of evidence to back up. But like at the same time, like the reactions of the people after the fact, like, yes, I can understand being like upset, right? But like I think doubling down on it's not the best look.
Yeah. Also, this group in particular is old calendarist version. So like they're literally a sect that split over a calendar issue in like the 1960s.
Yeah. They deserve to be an E tier alone. Not only, well, because they're Nestorians, obviously, but the reason why they're not in D tier is because of that too. Like they have to be in E tier just because yeah.
Did we address the comment in the chat? I'm just looking at it now. I didn't know how long ago it was. Polycup Lysinger said better to be papist than Calvinist. So you've got to put RC bros above Anglo bros. How Calvinist are Anglicans really though?
Well, yeah, I mean it depends. And arguably, I mean, even if you are more or less a Calvinist soteriologically, the language that's used in the 39 articles about Christ's death, and the language that's used in like the service book, and related to like baptism and the Book of Common Prayer and all that stuff, it tends to be more universal atonement-y and perspective, right? So like the particular spin on Calvinism that you get in the English church isn't Puritanism for the most part. And it's,
and we also separated Puritans out here because Puritans are pretty much just the Congregationalists, and so that like they kind of became their own thing already.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, to my knowledge, like the Anglican Church at large never signed on to the Synod of Dort and stuff like that.
Well,
So there's-
yeah, they actually kind of did. It was that they yeah, I mean they participated in it, and for a while, I mean that they did more or less have a qualified subscription that, like, basically amounted to, reading it in a hypothetical universalist manner. Because they sent delegates, right? Davenant was a delegate, and they came away basically defending it afterwards, right? But it never really had power in the English context, because by the time of Charles the First, right, like it just wasn't being defended, right? Arminianism was, the norm in the Church of England. William Laud, was instituting his system, and he basically told preachers not to talk about predestination, like, at all, and that was just the tradition at that point. So to the extent that, like, people, I mean, a lot of Calvinists, once the Church of England reformed into an Episcopal body, just left. But those who did, they tended to have much more nuanced takes, and so this, like, idea, yeah, that, like, the Anglican Church is, like, uniquely reformed is, I think, a very reactionary take from, like, modern Calvinists, right? Because they want to return to this sort of, vision that they see espoused in, like, the 39 articles. But even the 39 articles themselves, they weren't, like, if you read the article on predestination, if you read the article on Christ's atonement, and even on free will, like, all of those things are written in such a way that you're really not under the impression that this wouldn't be incompatible with, like, Arminianism. And that's by design, I think, because, like, Melanchthonian sort of politics were actually one of the driving influences in Elizabethan England, right? Because Elizabeth herself wanted to follow this. She was a great fan of Melanchthon's, right? And she wanted to follow this more Melanchthonian sort of take on the church, rather than the Puritan take, which was, a lot of her advisors were taking. And so it was specifically written in such a way that it doesn't take a hard take on predestination. On free will, it's ambiguous enough. I mean, it talks about prevenient grace, but, like, it still could be interpreted in an Arminian manner. And on the sacraments, yes, like, it verbally seems to lean towards a reformed view on baptism and the Eucharist. But even there, it's vague enough that you can make an argument, and people from the time of the formulation of the articles did read it in a way that, like, especially Article 28, that didn't imply the negation of what Lutherans were espousing on the continent.
Yeah, it's not as clear cut as just saying they're reformed. I mean, they are, but they're intentionally vague. Also, this takes into account the current state of things to a degree. Like, the Oxford movement happened, and the Puritan type groups and the Presbyterian groups, like the people who are more, like, strictly reformed, split. And so the people who were lower on those types of things, generally speaking, broke off, and what was left is kind of an Anglicanism that is closer leaning to Lutheranism, I'd argue.
Yeah. I think Cranmer himself, you can't brand him as just a Calvinist either. And he was influenced by Melanchthon, Bullinger, Calvin, Zwingli, everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and now there's a comment in the chat about from Benjamin Zaboj. I'm probably saying that wrong. Yeah, if you judge how well denominations are going, Lutheranism can't be on S tier. Every European Lutheran country is in total catastrophe, and Lutherans struggle in USA.
That just means we need to leave Lutheranism on the S tier, but just, like, horizontally, like, move that
the bottom.
singular Lutheran rose to like
Yeah.
the farthest.
Also, like I think we've been kind of like if we're counting, we've been kind of counting the unless a denomination is like virtually all liberals, we've been like kind of discounting the liberals as like not counting. Like just like we wouldn't count ELCA as really Lutheran. Like when we went through Anglicans, we said we're not really talking about Church of England. We're more so talking about like GAFCON and continuing Anglicans.
Right. If we're
The
taking
issue is like, oh, go ahead.
well, if we're taking down everyone who adopts the name, then that's a bit arbitrary. So now, like
Yeah.
everyone who adopts Lutheran is automatically in the Lutheran category. Anyone who calls them so, and in that case, then the Sedes are actually Catholics because they claim to be Catholics, so they would be in the
Yeah.
Catholic tier. Then you have this very artificial thing. And in terms of like who's doing better, I mean everybody's doing bad, isn't it? Everyone's in decline. Like you might say, okay, the Southern Baptists are doing better because they preserve like stronger stances on abortion and homosexuality. It's like, okay, but they don't have the Lord's Supper, you know? Like you can't just cash all this out in terms of like political conservatism and so on.
I don't know
or
if
even
any of these
church
groups
attendance.
are even growing really. Yeah. I don't are any of them actually like maybe some of these like weird ones might be growing in size or something like Pentecostals might be growing.
I think the
Internationally?
PCA might be growing. You
The
know?
PCA is growing, but is the OP like but is it enough to counteract like is the OPC shrinking or like I don't know.
Right.
Like I don't know
Yeah,
what the total
PCUSA
number
is
of
like declining a ton. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hard to say. And like if we're gonna go by that, like the Waldensians are like tiny. Like I don't know how many like truly Waldensian. There are actually quite a few Waldensian churches around, but they're almost all part of like a reformed like church body, with a handful of exceptions, which is kind of what we're assessing here.
Yeah, and yeah, like we were saying earlier, is like we're doing theological accuracy from top down, and then the practical things horizontally. Right. So like yeah, like Lutheranism's not like the greatest right now in practical spheres in many parts of the world, but we believe we have like, you know, the pure gospel. So
I mean, in response to his second comment, if you discount liberals, his point is still true. He claims how many Lutherans are true, or wait, how many Lutherans that are true is in Lutheran European countries?
Yeah, very low.
I think what he's saying is how many Lutherans, like how many true Lutherans are there in these countries as compared to other Protestants? I don't know if Lutherans are doing any better or worse than other Protestant churches. Isn't it in like Latvia? Isn't like the Latvian Lutheran church like actually like super conservative now and it's like a state church?
In some ways, I've heard mixed things. I mean, Scandinavia as well. You know, you can talk about them, Norway, and I feel like Siberia is another example. So I don't think that it's, if you're talking about sheer numbers, you know, there might be an issue. But then how many true, you know,
like
Orthodox Roman Catholics are there in Mexico or Greece? Like
how many Orthodox continental Reformed are there anymore? Like in the continent of Europe? There are literally more Catholics in the Netherlands now than there are Reformed of any variety in the Netherlands. Like it's not even a Protestant country anymore. So like I don't think Lutherans are doing any worse than say the continental Reformed, or like how many conservative Presbyterians, like confessional Presbyterians, are there in Scotland anymore? I don't think the percentage is really any higher than say the percentage of people that are in the Selk in Germany.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to do a you know, in order to lose all of our subscribers, do a Lutheran synod, you know, tier list right now.
You know what would be sad is we might get more viewers on that than we would on this. We've got we would have, you know, like we'd have Eldana, we'd have the ACELC, we'd have like the AALC, we'd have like LCMS, Wells, Els,
the CLBA, the AFLC,
the AFLAC.
Yeah, there are a few others.
That'd be hilarious.
LCMC, the Church of Lutheran Brethren. Did I say that one? There's also the CLC, I think that's
I said
Confessing Lutheran Church. Oh, you said TLC.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few. Those are mostly micro synods though. The only ones that are really relevant are like LCMS, Wells, Els, and AFLC is pretty big, but they're pietists pretty much.
Maybe eventually there'll be a new sect. You never know. Maybe we keep making. Maybe there'll be like a Mahlerite church or something soon.
All right, F tier. Are these good?
Yeah,
I
the
think
only
this
one I
is-
might
this is
change
fine.
is the Apostolic Church in top, just because it has nice churches and the other ones don't. But
It does have nice churches.
That's true.
Although a lot of Seventh-day Adventists today have kind of moderated their position to where they're mostly like evangelicals.
hmm.
Yeah.
I'm fine
All right,
leaving it. This
that's
is
the
this
list.
is the definitive
That's
authoritative.
fine. Yeah,
The
let's-
definitive,
yeah.
authoritative
Here it
list.
is.
It's infallible.
Here it is, folks. If you want to know what church to go to, find something that is to the left and or above where you are currently, and just keep following that principle. Over enough time, you will eventually find the truth.
Yeah, if you're a Eastern Orthodox, you need to join a Waldensian or Dutch Reformed church.
Baby steps, my friends. Baby steps. If you're Oriental Orthodox, first go to Methodist, and then eventually you'll find your way to Congregational, and finally you'll up to the B tier, and you'll end up.
That's the wrong direction.
Oh,
Go backwards.
oh, you're right. It's right to left.
The-
It's
the left
Hebrew.
is high.
Okay. You're right. You're right. That'd be funny. Okay, so here's a question. Since nobody has any more chat questions, if you follow that principle, which conversions are the most likely? Us converting from something
some
to
of these are
immediately
super-
something on the left, or bumping up if you're like a Seventh-day Adventist, what are the odds that you become an ancient church of the East? Out of SDAs.
It is an interesting list. Like the patterns are like, if you just saw this, and like this would be extremely like obscure to like see this without any of our discussion.
Yeah.
Because the list like doesn't make a ton of sense with like if you saw this and you're like, why are Dutch Reformed split by Catholics and Sedes from Presbyterians?
I think that the most likely thing here is either the Catholic to Sede or the D tier Baptists kind of on the left there. Like that's a pretty easy. Those are pretty easy shifts to make.
Like
Yeah.
actually, like almost all of D tier is pretty like convertible, except for like the Nestorians. I mean, like the Amish are the primitivists. Like these two groups, the primitivists and the Anabaptists, could like interchange like fairly easily. But like then like the Anabaptists, like the non-primitivists, the evangelicals, and the Baptists are all like super close. Actually, even from the Methodists, Congregationalists, like all of those are like, I feel like in the same camp. They're like low church Protestant is what it is.
Yeah.
And like lower church than, well, not, I guess the Methodists aren't necessarily lower church than the Reformed, but they're kind of like in that like influenced by Pietism, influenced by Americanism, like that kind of group all together. But the rest of it's pretty obscure. Like if you're Oriental Orthodox, you're going to become a Pietist or an Arminian.
Yeah, tell us in the chat if you converted to any of your neighbors on our chart, and we'll tell you whether you went up or down. So the worst thing is for a Lutheran to become a Quaker.
Yeah,
a true L.
I think a lot of groups would do that though. Like I think a lot of groups would put Quaker at the bottom. If you're doing this from a different perspective, like Quakers just sitting in silence in a church until like someone like has the Holy Spirit come over them to say something, and then like just sitting back down and then just going back and sitting in silence in a room facing each other. It's
arguably not even a church, honestly. I mean,
I would say I would rather that our voters meetings were like that.
No, like verbally they deny that. Yeah, that they don't administer baptism or the Lord's Supper.
They don't.
Pretty sure.
Let me see what they do. They worship.
They just eat oats.
I gotta see now. Baptism. Oh, they reject. Oh, I don't even know if we should have included them at that point.
Yeah, I mean, like
They
at
don't
least like
baptize,
Salvation
really?
Army and some of these other like bodies that like don't baptize, they like encourage people to do it outside of their church. Like, yeah, with the Quakers, it's like, as far as
Oh,
I can tell, they don't even believe Jesus like instituted this to be like a regular rite for the church.
Oh yeah, I looked it up. Some of them do. Some of them do baptize now.
Nice.
Okay, so
Improvements.
some of them do. Some of them have changed and gone in a different direction.
Some of them are churches.
The Evangelical Friends Church International. Here you go.
Nice.
They do baptism, and they affirm penal substitution, the atonement, biblical infallibility. You know, they're moving in a better direction. They started in the 1880 or no. They started at some point. It's hard to tell based on the Wikipedia article. It doesn't say much. So, like, yeah, I mean, if you don't baptize or if you don't do any sacraments, it's just not a church. But for the people who do, you're down in F tier.
At least we have the oats. I keep going back to that. But actually, it wasn't Quakers who made Quaker oats. It was it was somebody who like saw the Quaker logo and was like, "Oh, I like," or the read like an encyclopedia article on Quakers and was like, "Man, purity, I like that. Honesty, integrity, that'd be great for our company." So,
all right, we have someone who went from mega church to Puritan to Presby to Lutheran. That was the right direction. All in the same direction.
mm-hmm. Euler's pupil says Walmart hesychasm.
Yeah. The Quakers are Walmart hesychists because they just sit there waiting for the Spirit to come upon them.
Thank you, Euler's pupil. Oh, would Lutherans have
we're
better
all
Missouri
LCMS.
Synod or Wells?
We're all
The
LCMS,
answer there
so.
is that we can the ideal reconciliation of Missouri Synod and the Wisconsin Synod is when the Wisconsin admits that we're correct about holy orders and we admit that Wisconsin is correct about women's suffrage. And this is a perfect compromise that we should make, and then we will we will rejoin.
And then the people who disagree with us on both of those issues, they get the boot.
Right, they go to Elka, and then all the old ELS Elkas come here, and we sort out everything with, like, you know, the Makana Jesus. We get rid of all their bad stuff. We join them. You know, we just purify everything. It's so simple. It'd be so easy if everyone would just fix their problems.
Yeah, if we just, you know, if we just schismed into more groups, everything would be fixed.
Yes.
Can we do a video explaining Intuitu Fidei and Walter's view of election?
Absolutely.
Can we? Yeah, we could. This
Yes.
we've referenced this like I think on like 3 different streams now. Is that we need to have like a debate stream where we debate all of the intra team issues.
Yeah, so I have a chapter on election hopefully coming out with Justin Sinner. It's the book is still in production, but I've been doing some work on election. I know I don't know if who all else here. I'm pretty sure Cameron is into these election debates as well. I don't know, Seth or Tony, if you guys are would want to participate.
I am. I'm not super well versed on them, but I've read, you know, I've read certainly some material on the topic. I used to be more in the Intuitu Fidei camp than I am now. I think I kind of take a moderating position, but I don't think I disagree with Walter really on anything. I would just kind of nuance it.
But we should think about that going forward. I wonder what format it would take. You know, if it would be a discussion, if we would do like a debate, but we'd have to figure out exactly what we think too. And that's something that in our like you know, communications with each other, I don't know if we've actually done that yet. So I don't know where everyone lies. Once we figure that out, we could put together something.
I think a good format for that would be, having a set of biblical text, right, that we just sort of discuss and say, well, how does this make sense in light of, said take on election, right?
Yeah. I think the issue with like the other things we have, like the other one we've talked about is like polity. Like I'm very much for like I'm very pro Episcopal polity, and Cam likes Walther on this issue, and I don't really like Walther as much on this issue. And he gets like, on the one hand, like he's practical on things, but like then I don't think he actually ends up in the right spot. But the issue like comes down to like some of these come down to like how we see authorities, and so it'll just like loop back to like how much emphasis do you place on, you know, taking a view that's in line with like the church fathers versus how much weight do you put on like Reformation era stuff, or weighting certain texts, or how much do you weight the interpretive tradition of a certain text, things like that end up to like kind of deciding the debates, which ends up being like kind of a more fundamental prolegomena issue than it actually will be a debate over the advantages and disadvantages of like Episcopal versus synodal polity. So
Yeah, and I think that one of the issues that comes up in that ecclesiology debate is I think that you and I probably don't even disagree on the practical elements of this, because for me the whole draw of quote unquote congregationalism, which I think is somewhat of a misnomer, is just where, you know, the powers of the keys ultimately reside, right? And that's compatible with saying that, well, like the general equity and pattern of the New Testament church like conforms to an episcopal form of government, which I'm sympathetic with. I think the apostles did kind of function very similar to how, you know, bishops function, you know, in the later church. And they're certainly, I would probably disagree with Walther. Walther's take on like rolling elders is more or less pretty similar to what the Presbyterians are saying. And sorry to any Presbyterians around here. I don't see any biblical reason for making a distinction between rolling and teaching elders, and that's something Walter's very keen on. So that's a point of dispute there, and so there's a lot of like little nuances to that debate that enter in.
that's an interesting one, because that's also one of those reform or Dutch Reform versus Presbyterian issues. Is that in the what's the difference? One of them has slightly different like they have slightly different polities from each other on like issues of elders, because the Dutch Reformed have a fourfold office of minister, then doctor, elder, and deacon, and then Presbyterians have a twofold office of elder and deacon, but then the elder comes in the form of teaching and ruling. And so they have like different like they have different like clerical structures, among a couple other small issues. But on classis versus like how the presbyteries run, because the Dutch see their pastor as more part of their congregation than as a part of the presbytery or classis, and then the Presbyterians see their pastor as more part of the presbytery and less part of their congregation. But
Right. Yeah, it looks like Noah has to go here soon. So do you want to try to wrap up the stream here?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you to everybody for asking questions, everyone who donated. More tier lists.
Maybe we can do more tier lists.
I think that this like that Church Fathers tier list. Hey, I feel
Church Fathers tier list would be cool.
Oh boy, that would be fun.
Scholastic tier list would be hard.
It would be hard.
I don't know that much about a lot of them. Like, how do I rank Alexander of Haley's? Like, I don't know.
In the middle somewhere. I mean, it's Aquinas is going to be on top. Like, there's really, in my view, it's hard to get around that. But
my boy Bonaventure.
Aquinas beat them out, but that's
S tier personally. Like, he's not the most sophisticated theologian, but like, even when he writes scholastic disputations, it's like he gets very little wrong, right? Because he doesn't swing for the fences too much. like Duns Scotus, people like that. They'll swing for the fences and miss, but they'll also like come up with some of the most creative takes on like metaphysics and theology you've ever encountered. So
True.
That's
I mean,
what like
I could do without material angels, but
that's actually I'm kind of sympathetic with that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well,
Augustine says there are material angels. So
yeah, but he didn't get everything. He also, Augustine was a man of his time, you see, just like Luther. But yeah, I do have to go. We have a guest pastor tomorrow, and I'm gonna go and hang out with him before Sunday. So, all
right.
Yep.
Thanks for joining, everyone. I think we'll end it. Sorry, Gamer King. We maybe can answer that in a future question. Or future. What's the Lutheran view of apostolic succession? It's kind of a lot to unpack.
Oh, that's a long one. Yeah, we can do that one another time.
Yeah.
Join the patron chat. We'll talk about it there.
Yeah, join the patron chat. Everyone, you can donate to the Weiss family directly on GoFundMe. Thank you to our Noah Holzclaw for watching and donating to them. Maybe the team will give a little donation of their own. We can talk. It's a team decision. If you want to become patrons or subscribe through Subscribestar, you can find those. I'll put links in the channel comments or on the video comments, or you can find them in the descriptions of our other videos or linked in the comments there. Patreon/Scholastic Lutherans, Subscribestar/Scholastic Lutherans. Follow us on Twitter at Gerhard's Ghost. We don't really tweet much at all. We've tweeted like 5 tweets. Like and subscribe. Hit your notification bell. Have a nice day.
Peace.